The conference room door slammed shut in her face, literally. Not a polite dismissal. Not a "we'll call you." The senior officer looked straight through Nurse Emma Reeves like she was a smudge on his reading glasses and said, "This is a strategic briefing, not a staff meeting. Out." She didn't argue, didn't plead, just turned on her heel, white sneakers squeaking against polished tile, and walked. 30 seconds later, every screen in Riverside Veterans Medical Complex went black. Alarms screamed. Oxygen monitors flatlined across 3 floors. And while colonels scrambled and doctors shouted into dead phones, Emma Reeves stood in the hallway, eyes closed, counting backwards from 10, because she'd seen this exact scenario before. She'd built the system they just broke. Before we go any further, if you want to see how this plays out, how the woman they threw out becomes the one they can't survive without, stay with me until the very end. And drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's get into it. The morning started ordinary enough, which should have been Emma's first warning. Riverside Veterans Medical Complex didn't do ordinary. Not with its chrome and glass facade trying too hard to look civilian. Not with the armed checkpoints every 50 yards. And definitely not with the kind of patients who arrived via helicopter at 3 in the morning with injuries nobody was allowed to discuss. Emma had been there 6 months. Long enough to know which hallways the generals used. Short enough that most staff still thought she was a temp. She wore the same plain blue scrubs as everyone else. No rank insignia. No name tag beyond E. Reeves. RN. She kept her sandy blonde hair pulled back tight. Didn't wear makeup. We didn't make small talk in the break room. People assumed she was fresh out of nursing school. Young. Naive. Harmless. They had no idea she'd spent 5 years in combat medical units across 3 continents before she'd even turned 25. The facility itself sprawled across the northern edge of Ashford, Montana, a town that barely registered on most maps. Which was exactly the point. Riverside wasn't your standard VA hospital. It served active duty personnel from classified operations and handled trauma cases that never made it into official records, and operated under enough bureaucratic layers that most employees didn't know what happened. 2 floors above their own department, Emma worked post-surgical recovery. Ward 7. 12 beds. All of them occupied by soldiers who'd been through hell and weren't allowed to talk about it. She changed dressings, monitored vitals, administered admits, and kept her mouth shut. The doctors barely acknowledged her. The officers treated her like furniture. She preferred it that way. Reeves. Charge nurse Patricia Dunmore appeared in the doorway. Tablet in hand. Expression pinched. Director's office. Now, Emma finished adjusting the IV drip for the patient in bed 4, a Marine who'd lost his leg to an IED and most of his words to whatever he'd seen afterward. She didn't rush. Dunmore could wait. Did you hear me? Heard you. Emma marked the chart. Checked the flow rate one more time. Then turned. What's this about? Facility-wide briefing. All senior staff. Dunmore's gaze flicked up and down Emma's frame like she was scanning for defects. I don't know why they want you there. But Director Calloway specifically requested every department head send a representative. I'm not a department head. You're who we're sending. Dunmore's smile didn't reach her eyes. Try not to embarrass us. The director's office occupied the top floor of the administrative wing, a part of the complex Emma had never been to. She took the elevator up, watched the floor numbers climb, and felt the air grow colder. Literally, they kept the upper levels freezing, probably to remind everyone that comfort was a privilege, not a right. The conference room was already packed when she arrived. 20, maybe 25 people. All of them wearing either officer uniforms or the kind of business casual that screamed, I make 6 figures and have a graduate degree. Emma recognized a few faces. Dr. Marcus Friedman from cardiology. Colonel Janet Voss from personnel. The head of security, whose name she'd never bothered to learn. She slipped into a chair near the back. Nobody looked at her. Director Leonard Calloway stood at the head of the table. A man in his late 50s with silver hair, tailored suit, and the kind of posture that suggested he'd never had a moment's doubt in his life. Next to him stood someone Emma didn't recognize, a younger man. Mid-30s. Wire-rimmed glasses. Visitor badge clipped to his pocket. Thank you all for coming. Calloway began. Voice smooth as expensive whiskey. I know you're busy, so I'll keep this brief. This is Dr. Fens. Julian Mercer from Sentinel Systems Integration. They've been contracted to upgrade our emergency response infrastructure. Mercer stepped forward, fingers tapping against a remote control. A projection screen descended behind him. What we're implementing is a fully automated crisis management network, real-time monitoring across all departments. Medical, security, communication, utilities. If there's a breach, a power failure, a medical emergency, the system detects it and deploys countermeasures before human operators even realize there's a problem. Emma's jaw tightened. Response time. Mercer continued, clicking through slides, filled with graphs and architectural diagrams. Drops from an average of 4 minutes to under 30 seconds. We eliminate human error. We eliminate panic. We eliminate. You eliminate redundancy. Emma said. The room went quiet. Heads turned. Mercer blinked at her like she'd materialized out of thin air. Excuse me. Emma kept her voice level. You're describing a single point of failure. If the automated system goes down, nobody knows how to respond manually anymore. You're not eliminating human error. You're concentrating risk. Mercer's smile thinned. And you are Nurse Reeves? Calloway interjected, his tone suggesting he'd just noticed a stain on his carpet. Post-surgical recovery. I see. Mercer's gaze slid over her the way you'd look at a stray dog that wandered into a board meeting. Well, Nurse Reeves, I appreciate your concern. But this system has been implemented in 6 other high-security medical facilities without incident. I think we can trust the expertise of engineers who've spent years developing this technology over. He paused. Eyebrows raised. Gut feelings from nursing staff. A few people chuckled. Not loud, just enough to sting. Emma didn't flinch. Kaiser Permanente in San Diego. VA Hospital in Charleston. Northridge Medical in Denver. Those? The 6 you're talking about. Mercer's smile vanished. How did you... Because I read the contract proposal you submitted. It's in the shared drive under facility upgrades. Publicly accessible to anyone with network credentials. She leaned back in her chair. You left out the part where San Diego had a 4-hour system lockout during a trauma surge last year. Or how Charleston had to manually override the entire grid after your automation decided a power fluctuation was a cyber attack and shut down their OR. The room had gone completely silent now. Calloway's expression darkened. That's classified operational data. It's incident reports required by federal oversight. Emma said, classified from the public. Maybe. Not from facility staff. Mercer recovered quickly, pasting the smile back on. Those were early-stage growing pains. The current version has been completely debugged. Has it been tested under combat medical scenarios? This isn't a combat facility. Tell that to the Marine in bed 4 who still wakes up screaming. Emma met his eyes. You're installing this system in a facility that handles classified trauma cases from active operations. You really think a commercial hospital simulation is going to cut it? Colonel Voss, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, spoke up for the first time. She has a point, Director. We should at least run a field test before full implementation. Calloway's jaw tightened. The decision has already been made. Colonel, installation begins Monday. Then you're making a mistake. Emma said. That did it. Calloway turned to face her fully. And the temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Miss Reeves, you are a contract nurse with 6 months of tenure at this facility. You are here as a courtesy because your supervisor couldn't be bothered to attend. You do not have the expertise, the clearance, or the authority to question strategic decisions made by facility leadership. Do I make myself clear? Emma held his gaze. Crystal. Good. Then I suggest you return to your duties and leave operational planning to those qualified to handle it. It wasn't a suggestion. Emma stood, pushed her chair back, and walked toward the door. Nobody said a word. She could feel their eyes on her back, some embarrassed, Some satisfied, most just uncomfortable, that they'd witnessed someone get publicly gutted. She was halfway to the elevator when she heard footsteps behind her. "Wait!" Emma turned. Colonel Voss stood in the hallway, arms crossed. "That took guts." Voss said, "Stupid guts." But guts seemed important. Important doesn't pay the bills when you're filing for unemployment. Voss studied her. "You former military," Emma hesitated. "Why do you ask?" "Because you just cited federal incident reports from memory and identified failure patterns in integrated crisis systems. That's not something you learn in nursing school." "I read a lot." Voss smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Sure you do." She glanced back toward the conference room. "Word of advice. Keep your head down for a while. Calloway's got a long memory and a short temper. He doesn't like being challenged, especially not in front of contractors he's trying to impress. I'll keep that in mind." "Will you?" Voss's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across her features. "Because if you were smart, you'd have kept your mouth shut in there. But you didn't. Which means either you're reckless or you know something you're not saying." Emma didn't answer. Voss nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what I thought." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you were right. That system's a disaster waiting to happen. But nobody wants to hear it from someone wearing scrubs." The next 3 days passed. Intense silence. Emma went through her shifts like clockwork, checked vitals, distributed meds, changed bandages, filed reports. Dunmore watched her like a hawk, clearly waiting for an excuse to write her up. The other nurses gave her a wide berth, avoiding eye contact in the break room. Word had spread fast. The contract nurse, who'd talked back to the director, who'd humiliated a consultant in front of senior staff, who thought she was smarter than everyone else. Emma didn't try to defend herself, didn't explain, just kept working. On the 4th day, installation began. Sentinel Systems brought in a team of 12 technicians who swarmed the facility like ants, running cables through ceiling panels, mounting sensors in every room, replacing manual control panels with sleek touchscreen interfaces. The transformation happened fast. Too fast. In Emma's opinion, no testing period. No training sessions for staff. Just rip out the old system and plug in the new one. By Monday evening, Riverside Veterans Medical Complex was running entirely on automated crisis management. Dr. Mercer gave a demonstration in the main atrium, showing off the new interface to a crowd of administrators and medical staff, everything controlled from a central hub, real-time monitoring of every system, predictive algorithms that could anticipate problems before they occurred. This, Mercer announced with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong in his life, is the future of medical facility management. Emma watched from the second-floor walkway. She didn't clap. Tuesday was quiet. Wednesday. 2. By Thursday, people started to relax. Maybe the new system was fine. Maybe Reeves had been overreacting. Maybe automated really was better. Friday started normal. Emma arrived for her shift at 6 a.m., grabbed coffee from the break room that tasted like burnt rubber, and headed to Ward 7. The Marine in bed 4 was having a good day. Actually smiled when she checked his vitals. Small victories. At 10:05 a.m. Director Calloway called another briefing. This time, the invitation was explicit. Senior staff only. No representatives. No exceptions. Emma wasn't invited. Neither were any of the other nurses. Or most of the doctors, for that matter. This was the inner circle administrators, department heads, military brass, the people who made decisions. She found out about it from Dr. Diaz, Friedman, who stopped by Ward 7, around 10:30, looking flustered. "You seen Dunmore?" he asked. "Briefing upstairs." Right. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "They're implementing Phase 2 today? Full integration with regional emergency response networks." Emma's stomach dropped. "They're connecting us to outside systems. That's the whole point. Coordinated response across military medical facilities in the Northwest region. If there's a mass casualty event, resources get allocated automatically. Friedman shook his head. I don't like it either. But Calloway's convinced it's the next step in modern healthcare. It's the next step in creating a cascading failure. Maybe. Friedman lowered his voice. For what it's worth, I thought you were right. In that meeting, but you can't fight City Hall. Emma? Especially not when City Hall signs your paycheck. He left before she could respond. Emma stood in the middle of Ward 7, surrounded by beeping monitors and the quiet breathing of soldiers who'd survived worse than this, and felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Something was wrong. Not yet. But soon, she pulled out her phone and opened the facility network app. Most staff didn't know it existed. It was buried in the employee portal under system maintenance. But it showed real-time status of every major system in the complex. Power. Erupts. Medical equipment. Communication. Security. Everything showed green. Optimal function. Zero errors. Too perfect. Emma navigated to the command logs. The raw data feed that showed what the automated system was actually doing behind the scenes. Thousands of lines of code, scrolling past every second. She scanned through them, looking for a repeating error message, flagged as low priority. External authentication handshake failed, retrying in 30 seconds. It had been running for the past hour. 32 failed attempts. The system was trying to connect to something outside the facility, and whatever it was trying to reach wasn't responding. Emma's fingers moved fast, pulling up the network architecture diagram. The new system wasn't just monitoring Riverside, it was linked to 4 other military medical facilities across Montana, Idaho, and Washington, a distributed network, all feeding into a central processing hub located somewhere she didn't have clearance to access, and one of those facilities wasn't responding. She checked the timestamp. The connection had dropped at 9:47 a.m. 20 minutes before Calloway's briefing started. Emma closed the app and walked toward the elevator. She didn't run. Running attracted attention. But she moved fast, her brain already running through worst-case scenarios. If one node in the network was down, the system should reroute. That was basic redundancy. But if Sentinel had designed it the way she suspected with centralized processing and distributed monitoring, then a node failure wouldn't just reroute. It would trigger a diagnostic cascade as the system tried to reestablish the connection. And if it couldn't reestablish the connection, it would lock down. Emma reached the elevator and jabbed the button for the top floor. The doors slid shut. The elevator climbed. She needed to warn them. Needed to tell Calloway and his inner circle that they were about to lose every system in the building if they didn't disconnect from the network right now. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor. And immediately, she heard voices. Raised. Angry. Emma stepped out into the hallway. The conference room door was closed, but sound carried through it anyway. Can't simply shut it down. Director. The integration is already, I don't care what's already happening. I want to know why we're getting error notifications. It's a minor connectivity issue. I assure you, Emma walked faster. Reached the door. Grabbed the handle. It was locked. She knocked. Hard. The voices inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened a crack, and a woman Emma didn't recognize peered out. Mid-40s. Severe bun. The kind of glasses that cost more than Emma's monthly rent. This is a closed meeting. The woman said, I need to speak to Director Calloway. The director is unavailable. It's about the system integration. The woman's expression didn't change. Take it up with IT. There's no time for goodbye. Nurse Reeves. The door closed. The lock clicked. Emma stood in the hallway, hand still raised, and felt fury ignite in her chest. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, the calculated kind that came from years of watching people die because someone in charge was too proud to listen. Fine. She turned and headed back to the elevator. If they wouldn't let her in, she'd go over their heads. Colonel Voss had clearance. Voss would listen. Emma pulled out her phone and dialed the personnel office. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She tried Voss's direct line. Same thing. The elevator doors opened on the second floor. Emma stepped out and every light in the building went dark. Emergency power kicked in 3 seconds later. Bathing the hallways in red, alarms started screaming. Not the gentle chime of a single alert. The full-throated wail of catastrophic system failure. Emma's phone died in her hand. Just blinked off. Battery reading 0 despite being at 67% 30 seconds ago. Around her, doors burst open. Nurses stumbled out of patient rooms, shouting over the alarms. Somewhere below, she heard breaking glass. The automated system hadn't locked down. It had cascaded. Emma ran. She hit the stairs at full sprint, taking them 2 at a time. One hand on the rail to keep from falling. Her mind was already running through the checklist. Backup generators should have kicked in by now. Maintaining power to critical systems, life support, oxygen, monitors. But if the cascade had hit the automation layer first, the generators wouldn't know what to prioritize. They'd be trying to power everything at once, which meant powering nothing properly. She burst through the door into Ward 7. Half the monitors were dead. The other half flickered erratically, showing vitals that couldn't possibly be real. The Marine in bed 4 was sitting up, eyes wide, breathing fast. The woman in bed 9, post-surgical, fresh incision. High infection risk was clutching her chest as her oxygen monitor flatlined. Emma didn't hesitate. She crossed to bed 9, grabbed the manual oxygen tank from under the bed frame, and fitted the mask over the woman's face. Breathe. Slow. With me. The woman's panic eased. Color returned to her lips. Around the ward, other nurses were starting to move. But they moved like people underwater, slow. Confused. Waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Manual protocols, Emma shouted over the alarms. Check every patient. Eyeball assessment. Ignore the monitors. Nobody moved. Now, that broke the spell. They scattered. Each nurse taking 2 beds. Hands moving over patients. Checking pulses and pupils and breathing. Emma grabbed the landline phone on the wall. Dead. She tried the emergency call button. Nothing. Communications were down, which meant no way to call for help. No way to coordinate between departments. If someone was coding 3 floors up, nobody down here would know until someone physically ran up the stairs. Emma's jaw clenched. She turned to the nearest nurse, a young guy named Stevens, who looked about 2 seconds from a panic attack. Go to the pharmacy. Get emergency med kits for cardiac and respiratory failure. Don't use the elevator. Stairs only. But the system, forget the system. Manual. Everything manual. Go. Stevens ran. Emma moved from bed to bed, assessing, prioritizing. The Marine was stable. Bed 6 needed a new IV bag, but could wait. Betu was postop neuro. Needed monitoring, but currently unconscious and breathing steady. She was reaching bed 11 when she heard the sound. Distant at first. Then louder, rhythmic, mechanical. Helicopter rotors. Emma's blood went cold. She ran to the window and looked out across the complex grounds. 3 Blackhawks incoming. Flying low and fast. Not a supply run. Not a routine transport. Mass casualty. And the entire hospital was running on emergency power with no communications. No automated routing. No way to coordinate where those patients would go or who would treat them. Behind her, the ward door slammed open. Dr. Friedman stood there. Tu face pale. Lab coat. Half-buttoned. Inbound trauma from a training accident. 23 casualties. At least 8 critical états pour minute. Emma turned from the window. Where's Calloway still in the conference room? The door's locked from the inside and nobody can override it. The automated system controls all the electronic locks and it's cascading. Emma finished. Who's running triage? Nobody. We can't even get the trauma bay doors open. They're on automatic sensors. And the sensors are fried? Of course they were. Emma pushed past Friedman and into the hallway. Red emergency lights painted everything in shades of blood. Staff ran in every direction. Some carrying equipment. Some just running. Because panic was contagious. She grabbed a passing orderly by the arm. "Where's Colonel Voss?" "I don't, second floor." "Maybe personnel office." Emma let him go and headed for the stairs again. Her legs burned. Her lungs burned. She didn't slow down. The personnel office was chaos. Files scattered everywhere. Computers dark. People shouting into dead phones. Emma scanned the room and spotted Voss near the back, trying to manually pry open a locked filing cabinet. Colonel Voss looked up, saw Emma, and something like relief crossed her face. "Reeves, tell me you know how to fix this." "Can't fix it. Systems cascading through every facility in the network, but I can bypass it if you give me access to the main server room. Director's the only one with server clearance. Director's locked in a conference room he can't get out of because his fancy automation won't open the door." Emma stepped closer. "You want those soldiers landing in 4 minutes to have a trauma bay to go to. You need to give me access now." Voss stared at her for one long second. Then she reached into her desk drawer, pulled out a keycard, and tossed it. Emma caught it midair. "Server room's in the basement." Voss said, "Sub-level 2. East wing. You've got 3 minutes before those helicopters land and nowhere to put the wounded." Emma was already moving. The stairs down were darker than the ones going up. Emergency lighting only covered main floors. The sublevels ran on backup systems that apparently hadn't gotten the memo. Emma used her phone's flashlight. It was dead. But the LED still worked. If you held the power button and navigated through concrete corridors that smelled like dust and old fear. Sub-level 2. East wing. The server room door was heavy steel. No window. Marked only with a small placard. Authorized personnel only. Emma swiped Voss's keycard. Nothing. She swiped again. The light stayed red. Of course. Electronic locks. All controlled by the system. That was currently eating itself alive. Emma stepped back. Looked at the door. And felt something ugly twist in her chest. She'd been calm up until now. Focused. Professional. But standing here? In the dark. Listening to alarms. Scream. And knowing that soldiers, her soldiers, people who'd survived combat only to die, because some consultant wanted to impress a director with buzzwords and automation were about to land with nowhere to go. Emma kicked the door. It didn't budge. She kicked it again. And again. Her sneaker left scuff marks on the steel. Her toes screamed in protest. "Open." "You? Bastard." One more kick. The door swung inward, not because she'd broken it, because someone had opened it from the inside. Emma froze. Flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to illuminate a figure standing in the server room doorway. A man. 50s. Graying beard. Wearing a maintenance uniform with a name patch that read Tours. He looked at her. Looked at the keycard in her hand. Looked at the scuff marks on the door. Then he smiled. "Took you long enough," Torres said, and stepped aside. Emma didn't move. Her brain was trying to catch up with what her eyes were seeing, a maintenance worker who somehow knew she was coming, who'd been waiting in a locked server room during a facility-wide catastrophe, who was looking at her like they'd scheduled this meeting 3 weeks ago. "Who the hell are you?" she managed. Torres gestured into the darkness behind him. "Someone who's been watching this train wreck build up speed for the past 6 days. You coming in? Or you planning to stand there until those choppers land?" Emma stepped through the doorway. The server room was bigger than she'd expected, rows of equipment racks stretching back into shadows, lights blinking red and amber across dozens of machines. The air thick with the smell of hot electronics and recycled air. Torres moved between the racks, like he owned the place, pulling a flashlight from his belt. "You work here?" Emma asked. 22 years. Facilities? Maintenance? Which means I'm the guy who keeps the pipes from freezing and the generators from exploding. And nobody notices I exist until something breaks. He stopped at a particular rack, 3rd row back, and tapped the metal frame Also means I know where they installed the manual override panel that Dr. Roddy. Mercer swore up and down. Didn't exist. Emma's pulse kicked up. There's a manual override. Building code requires it. Federal regulation for medical facilities. You can automate all you want. But there's got to be a way to shut it down and go analog if things turn to shit. Torres pulled open a panel on the side of the rack, revealing a mess of switches and circuit breakers labeled in faded marker. Mercer hit it real good. Told Calloway it was legacy equipment, not part of the new system, which is technically true. It's not part of the new system. It's the kill switch. Why didn't you use it? Torres looked at her over his shoulder, eyebrows raised. Because I'm a maintenance worker who barely finished high school. And the last time I questioned a director's decision, I got written up for insubordination. You're the one who stood up in that meeting and told them they were idiots. Figured if anyone was going to take the fall for pulling the plug, better it be someone with medical credentials. Emma stepped closer, studying the panel, rows of switches, each one controlling a different subsystem. Power, du vac, communication, medical equipment, security locks, all of them currently set to auto. Above them, the building groaned. Something crashed, distant but loud enough to feel through the floor. How long until those helicopters land? Torres asked. Emma checked her watch. The display was dark, dead like everything else electronic, but she could still read the hands. 2 minutes. Maybe less. Then you better decide fast whether you trust a maintenance guy you just met. Because the second you flip those switches, every alarm in this building is going to scream even louder and Calloway's going to know someone overrode his shiny new toy. Emma reached for the first switch. Hesitated. If she did this, there was no coming back. No claiming it was an accident. No plausible deniability. She'd be openly defying facility leadership during a crisis. Taking control of systems she had no official authorization to touch. Her hand steadied. She flipped the switch. The label read, Communications. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every speaker in the building crackled to life with a burst of static so loud. Emma flinched. The automated voice that had been looping error messages cut off mid-syllable, replaced by dead air. Torres grabbed a radio from his belt, an old-school walkie-talkie, the kind that didn't need a network to function, and keyed the mic, facilities to all stations. Do you copy static? Then a voice? Faint, but clear. Trauma Bay copies. Friedman here. How the hell? Reeves is in the server room, running manual override. Torres said, looking at Emma. You need comms. You got comms. What else? Emma flipped the second switch. Medical equipment. Priority systems. The change was immediate. Through the walls. Through the floors. She heard the sound of machines coming back online. Monitors beeping. Ventilator cycling. The steady electrical hum of life support doing what it was designed to do. Trauma bay doors. Emma said into Torres's radio, Can you open them manually? A pause. Then Friedman's voice. Stronger now. Doors are opening. We've got eyes on the incoming. First bird is 30 seconds out. Emma flipped 3 more switches in rapid succession. Avach. Emergency lighting? Security, manual mode. Somewhere above them, she heard the distinct click-thunk of electronic locks disengaging. Every door in the building that had been sealed by the cascade was now controllable again. People could move. Equipment could be transported. The building could breathe. You just saved about 24 lives. Torres said quietly. Haven't saved anyone yet. Emma handed him back the radio. Get to the loading dock. When those choppers land, someone needs to coordinate ground transport. You know this building better than anyone. What about you? I'm going to the trauma bay. Calloway's going to lose his mind when he figures out you did this. Let him. Emma was already moving toward the door. He can fire me after we stop people from dying. She hit the stairs at a run, taking them 3 at a time now that emergency lighting had come back online. Her legs screamed. Her lungs burned. She didn't slow down. The main floor was still chaos. But it was organized chaos now. Staff moved with purpose instead of panic. Orders were being shouted. That actually made sense. Through the windows, Emma could see the first Black Hawk touching down on the helipad. Rotor wash, kicking up dust and debris. She burst through the doors into the trauma bay just as the first gurney came rolling in. The soldier on it couldn't have been more than 20. Dark skin, buds cut, eyes wide, and unfocused. His left leg was gone below the knee, wrapped in a tourniquet that was already soaked through. Blood everywhere. 2 medics flanking the gurney. One of them calling out vitals that Emma's brain processed automatically. BP dropping. Heart rate 140. Responsive, but shocky. Doctor. Friedman appeared at Emma's shoulder. Already gloved. Face mask hanging around his neck. We've got 4 oars prepped, but only 2 anesthesiologists on shift. Triage fast. Emma nodded and moved into the flow. This she knew. This she'd trained for, not in nursing school. In field hospitals, where the wounded came in faster than you could count them. Where decisions got made in seconds. Because seconds were all you had. Second gurney. Shrapnel wounds across the chest and abdomen. Breathing labored. Priority 1. Third gurney. Head trauma. Unconscious. Skull fracture, visible. Priority 1. Fourth gurney. Broken arm. Lacerations. Alert and swearing. Priority 3. Emma called them out as they came. Directing traffic. And the staff responded, no confusion, no hesitation. They moved like a machine. The kind built from training and experience instead of code and sensors. 15 minutes in. A nurse Emma didn't recognize grabbed her arm. We've got a problem in OR 2. Patient's crashing and we can't get his blood type to come up in the system. What's his tag? Say O negative, then give him O negative. Why are you waiting for a computer to tell you what's written on his wrist? The nurse blinked. Then ran. 20 minutes in. The doors burst open again, and Colonel Voss strode through. Still wearing her personnel office clothes, but now carrying a tactical radio and a clipboard. She spotted Emma immediately. Server room override was you? Yes, ma'am. Good. Calloway's having a breakdown on the executive floor, and Mercer's trying to reboot the system remotely. I told them both to go to hell. Voss shoved the clipboard at Emma. I need you to verify patient intake. We've got 3 more birds inbound, and the manifest doesn't match what's landing. Emma scanned the list. 23 names. 23 service numbers. But the numbers were wrong. Some of them repeated. Some of them flagged with codes she didn't recognize. This isn't a training accident, she said slowly. Voss's expression didn't change. No, it's not. What happened? Classified convoy took fire 40 miles north of here. Ambush. We're not calling it that officially because if we call it that, we have to explain what the convoy was doing and where it was going. Voss lowered her voice. Some of these soldiers aren't supposed to exist on paper. You understand. Emma understood. Black ops. Deep cover. The kind of operations that never made it into casualty reports because acknowledging the casualties meant acknowledging the operation. How many more incoming? Another 18. Maybe more. Intel's still sketchy. We don't have space for 18 more. Then make space. Voss's jaw tightened. Because they're coming, whether we're ready or not. The next 40 minutes blurred together. Emma moved between trauma bays, coordinating with surgical teams, redirecting resources, making calls that would have required 3 levels of approval under normal circumstances. Nobody questioned her. Nobody asked for credentials. They just listened when she talked and moved, when she pointed, somewhere in the chaos. She passed a window and saw Director Calloway on the far side of the atrium, surrounded by people in suits. He was gesturing wildly. Facered. Clearly shouting, through the glass. Emma couldn't hear what he was saying. She didn't need to. At the 60-minute mark, the last helicopter landed. 18 more wounded. Just like Voss had said. But these weren't shrapnel victims or traumatic amputations. These were chemical exposure cases. Soldiers with blistered skin. Respiratory distress. Symptoms that looked like nerve agent contamination. Doctor. Friedman took one look and went pale. We need to isolate them. Full hazmat protocols. If that's what I think it is, it's not contagious. Emma said. Everyone turned to look at her. How do you know? Friedman demanded. Because Emma had seen this before. Had treated it before. In a field hospital outside Kandahar where a supply depot had been hit and barrels of industrial solvent had ruptured, burning through protective gear and into skin. Not a weapon? Un accident? But the symptoms were identical. She couldn't say any of that. Get them into isolation anyway. She said instead, standard decon procedures. But it's chemical, not biological. You're not looking at transmission risk. Friedman stared at her for another long second, then nodded and started barking orders. By the 90-minute mark, the trauma bay had stabilized. All critical patients were in surgery or intensive care. The walking wounded were being treated in overflow areas. The dead, 3 of them. Soldiers who hadn't made it past triage were being processed by personnel Emma didn't recognize. People who showed up with sealed body bags and paperwork that didn't ask for signatures. Emma stood in the hallway outside OR 4, back against the wall, and finally let herself breathe. Her scrubs were covered in blood. Not hers. Her hands shook when she tried to wipe her face. Adrenaline crash. Coming in hard and fast. Footsteps approached. Heavy. Deliberate. Emma looked up. Director Calloway stood 10 feet away, flanked by 2 security officers. His face was the color of spoiled meat. His expensive suit had lost its press. Behind him, Doctor Mercer hovered like a ghost. Tablet clutched to his chest. Nurse Reeves. Calloway said, voice tight and cold. You are relieved of duty. Effective immediately. Emma pushed off the wall. We're still processing incoming wounded. You are relieved. Security will escort you from the premises. There are soldiers in those ORs who will die if you had no authority. Calloway's control snapped. His voice rose, echoing down the hallway. You had no clearance, no authorization, and no right to override facility systems during a crisis. You've compromised operational security, violated about a dozen federal regulations, and saved 41 lives. Colonel Voss said. She'd appeared from somewhere behind Emma, still carrying the tactical radio, clipboard now tucked under her arm. She looked at Calloway, the way you'd look at something stuck to your shoe. Those soldiers are alive because Reeves bypassed your failing automation and implemented manual protocols. Voss continued. Everything she did was within federal emergency response guidelines, which you'd know if you'd bothered to read the regulations instead of signing off on whatever Sentinel systems put in front of you. Mercer stepped forward. Colonel, the system didn't fail. It experienced a temporary disruption due to shit design and zero redundancy, exactly like Reeves warned you. Voss turned her attention to him. Your automated network cascaded through 4 facilities simultaneously. Riverside, Fort Preston, Cascade the Regional, and Mountain View. All of them lost critical systems. All of them had to implement manual overrides. The only difference is that Riverside had someone who knew what the hell she was doing. Calloway's jaw worked. This is not your jurisdiction. Colonel. No? It's yours. And you screwed it up. Voss didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. Regional Command is already sending investigators. They'll be here by nightfall. You want to fire the one person who kept this disaster from turning into a massacre. You go right ahead. But you'll be doing it on record, in front of people who actually understand emergency medical response. The hallway went silent. Calloway looked at Emma, looked at Voss, looked at the security officers, like he was trying to decide if they'd back him up. They wouldn't. Emma could see it in their faces. These weren't administrative lackeys. These were military police who just watched a contract nurse coordinate a mass casualty response while their director had a meltdown. Get out of my sight. Calloway finally said, the words coming out like broken glass. All of you. He turned and walked away. Mercer scurried after him. Tablet pressed against his chest like a shield. The security officers didn't follow. They just nodded at Voss and headed back the way they'd come. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That Voss said quietly. Was monumentally stupid. Yeah, also necessary. Voss handed her the clipboard. These are the soldiers who made it through surgery. Regional Command wants verification that treatment protocols were followed for classified personnel. I need you to review the charts. Emma took the clipboard. Her hands had stopped shaking. Calloway's going to bury me. Calloway's going to be lucky if he's not facing criminal charges. Voss started walking, and Emma fell into step beside her. Mercer sold him a system that wasn't ready for deployment. Calloway authorized installation without proper testing. When it failed, he locked himself in a conference room and did nothing while people died. That's negligence at best. Dereliction at worst. They passed through a set of double doors into a quieter corridor. The sounds of the trauma bay faded behind them. How did you know, Voss asked. About the system failing. About the cascade. You knew before it happened. Emma didn't answer immediately. They walked past empty offices, past darkened conference rooms, past windows that showed the helipad where the last Black Hawk was lifting off. I've seen bad systems before, she said finally. Seen what happens when people trust automation more than training. Seen good soldiers die because someone thought a computer could make better decisions than a medic with eyes on the patient. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Voss stopped walking, turned to face her directly. I pulled your file? Real file? Not the HR summary. Took some digging. Required some calls to people who owe me favors. But I got it. Emma's stomach went cold. Lieutenant Emma Reeves? Voss said, Army Combat Medic Specialist. 5 years active duty. 3 deployments. Attached to Special Operations Medical Element. Honorable discharge 8 months ago with commendations for valor and a medical crisis management certification that about 6 people in the entire country hold. She paused. You weren't just a medic. You were the one they sent when regular medics couldn't handle it. Emma's jaw tightened. That was a different life. Was it Voss studied her? Because from where I'm standing, you just did exactly what you were trained to do. Identified a critical failure, implemented emergency protocols, and saved lives while everyone else was still trying to figure out which way was up. I'm a contract nurse now. You're a soldier pretending to be a contract nurse. Voss's expression softened slightly. Why? Why walk away from that and end up here? Changing bedpans and taking orders from people who don't know a damn thing about combat medicine. Emma looked past her. Out the window. At the mountains rising in the distance beyond the complex. She'd come to Riverside because it was quiet. Because it was supposed to be safe. Because after 5 years of watching people die in deserts and mountains and cities whose names she still couldn't pronounce, she'd wanted to do something simple. Turns out simple didn't exist. I got tired of making calls. She said, who lives, who dies, who gets on the helicopter and who gets left behind. I thought I could step back. Be part of the machine instead of running it. How's that working out? Emma almost smiled. Almost. Not great. Voss nodded slowly. Regional Command wants to interview you. About today. About how you knew to override the system. How you coordinated the trauma response. All of it. They're going to ask about your background. And if I don't want to answer then you don't answer. But they're going to dig. And once they start digging, they're going to find out exactly who you used to be. Voss held her Hase. Might be easier if it came from you first. Before Emma could respond, the lights flickered. Not the emergency lights. The main power. Then they steadied. Burned bright. And the automated voice she'd silenced 90 minutes ago crackled back to life over the speakers. System reboot in progress. All personnel stand by for automated. The voice cut off. Voss's radio squawked. Colonel, this is Torres in the server room. Someone just tried to restart the Sentinel system remotely. I killed it, but they're going to try again. Emma and Voss locked eyes. Mercer. Emma said. They ran. The server room was 3 floors down and half a building away. They took the stairs because the elevators were still unreliable. Voss on the radio the whole time, coordinating with Torres. With security? With whoever else she could raise? When they burst through the server room door? Torres was standing in front of the override panel, arms crossed, looking grimmer than Emma had ever seen him. He's trying to force a remote restart, Torres said without preamble. Locked me out of the command terminal. I can keep killing the power manually. But eventually he's going to figure out how to bypass the kill switch. Can we disconnect the system entirely, Voss demanded. Not without taking down half the building. The Sentinel network is integrated into everything: power routing, HVAC controls, medical equipment interfaces. It's like trying to remove a tumor that's wrapped around your spine. You cut it out. You kill the patient. Emma moved to the terminal. Torres had been locked out of. The screen showed a login prompt with a countdown timer, 60 seconds. When it hit 0, the automated system would restart, whether they wanted it to or not. We need Mercer's credentials, she said. Good luck getting him to hand them over. Was muttered. Emma pulled out the facility network app on her phone miraculously. It had come back online when the comms were restored and navigated to the admin access logs. Every login, every override, every command executed through the Sentinel system was recorded. There, Mercer's username, but the password was encrypted. 50 seconds. Emma's fingers moved across the screen, pulling up network diagnostics, system architecture files, anything that might give her a backdoor. Torres was watching over her shoulder, Voss pacing behind them. Radio pressed to her ear as she updated someone on the situation. 40 seconds. This is pointless, Torres said. Even if you got in, he'd just lock you out again. Not if I change the root credentials first. Emma found what she was looking for: a legacy admin account that predated the Sentinel installation. The kind of account that existed for emergency maintenance. The kind of account that people like Mercer assumed had been disabled. It hadn't been. 30 seconds. Emma logged in. The system accepted her credentials and opened into a control panel she'd never seen before. Raw access to every subsystem, every protocol, every automated response programmed into the Sentinel network, and buried at the bottom of the command hierarchy, a single line: remote access, enabled, 20 seconds. Emma disabled it. The countdown froze at 18 seconds. The login prompt vanished, replaced by a flashing red error message: connection lost. Retry failed. Torres let out a breath that sounded like a prayer. That's going to make someone very angry. Good, Emma said. Voss's radio crackled again. Different voice this time. Alda, authority that didn't need to announce itself. Colonel Voss. This is General Marcus Keating, Regional Medical Command. I understand you have a situation. Voss keyed the mic. Eyes on Emma. Situation is contained. Sir. Facility is stable. Casualty response complete. A pause? I'm hearing reports that a contract nurse initiated emergency protocols without authorization and that Director Calloway has demanded her immediate termination. That's correct. Sir. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm also hearing that said contract nurse is the only reason we didn't lose half those soldiers. That true? Voss smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Yes, sir. I'll be there in 90 minutes. Nobody fires anybody until I've had a chance to sort this mess out personally. That clear crystal. Sir. The radio went silent. Torres looked at Emma. You know what a general flying out personally means. It means Calloway's screwed. Voss said, and it means every decision made today is going to get dissected by people who actually know what they're doing. Emma felt the weight of it settling over her. The adrenaline was draining fast, leaving behind exhaustion and the first creeping edges of something that might have been fear. She'd kept her head down for 6 months, stayed invisible, tried to leave the soldier behind, and now a general was coming to ask her questions. She didn't want to answer. I need to check on the patients, she said. Emma Voss started. I need to check on the patients. Emma repeated, and walked out before either of them could stop her. She made it back to Ward 7 before her legs gave out, sat down hard on the floor, outside bed 4, back against the wall, and just breathed. The Marine inside was asleep, vitals steady on the monitor that was once again working properly. The woman in bed 9 was stable. Everyone was stable. 41 incoming wounded. 38 had survived surgery. 3 hadn't made it. Better than it should have been. Worse than she wanted. Emma closed her eyes and heard footsteps approaching. Multiple sets. Heavy boots. Not the soft-soled shoes nurses wore. She opened her eyes. 3 men stood in the hallway. Not security. Not medical staff. Military uniforms. But no. Unit insignia. The kind of anonymity that screamed special operations. The one in front was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen too much sun and not enough sleep. He looked at Emma with the kind of recognition that made her stomach drop. "Lieutenant Reeves?" he said. "Been a long time." Emma's blood turned to ice, because she knew that voice, knew that face. "Captain, no. Major now." Based on the rank David Keller, her former commanding officer, the one who'd signed her discharge papers and told her she was making a mistake walking away, the one who knew exactly what she'd done during those 5 years in special operations medical units, the missions that didn't exist, the casualties that were never recorded, the times she'd made impossible calls, and lived with the consequences. "What are you doing here?" she managed. Keller glanced at the soldiers flanking him. 2 of the wounded from today's convoy were my men. I came to make sure they made it through. He looked back at her. Imagine my surprise when I heard the nurse, who saved their lives, used to work for me. Emma pushed herself to her feet. Her legs wobbled. She locked her knees. "I don't work for you anymore." "No. You work for Regional Medical Command now. Or you will. Once General Keating gets done interviewing you." Keller's expression was unreadable. That convoy wasn't random. Reeves. The ambush wasn't an accident. Someone knew exactly where we'd be and when. Someone with access to classified movement orders. Emma's breath caught. "You think there's a leak?" "I think there's a lot of things wrong at this facility that have nothing to do with automated systems failing." Keller stepped closer, lowering his voice. 3 months ago, another convoy got hit. Different location. Same pattern. Before that, a supply route got compromised. Before that, personnel files got accessed by someone who shouldn't have had clearance. Small things. Easy to miss. If you're not looking. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the one who stood up in that conference room and told Calloway his system was garbage. You're the one who saw the failure coming. You're the one who doesn't trust authority just because it wears a suit. Keller's jaw tightened. And because if someone inside this facility is feeding intel to hostile forces, we need someone on the inside who knows how to spot the signs. Emma shook her head. "I'm not doing this." "I'm not. You're already doing it." Keller interrupted. "You did it the second you overrode that system. The second you took control. You can't walk away from who you are." "Reeves. I learned that the hard way." "So did you." He was right. Emma hated that he was right. Before she could respond, alarms started blaring again. Different pattern this time. Not system failure. Security breach. Voss's voice crackled over the facility-wide speakers. "All personnel. Lockdown protocol. We have an unauthorized access attempt in sublevel 3. Security teams respond." Keller's expression went hard. He pulled a sidearm from his belt. When had he been carrying that, and turned to his men. "Get the wounded to secure transport." Now, they moved without question. Emma grabbed Keller's arm. "What's in sublevel 3? Classified medical archives. Patient records for Black Ops personnel." He pulled free of her grip. "If someone's accessing that, they're not looking for treatment histories." He ran. Emma ran after him. The stairs down to sublevel 3 were chaos. Security teams rushing past. Weapons drawn. Radios crackling with overlapping voices. Emma followed Keller through the confusion. Her medical credentials getting her past checkpoints that would have stopped anyone else. They hit sublevel 3. And immediately the temperature dropped. Colder down here. Darker. The kind of place where things got stored and forgotten. Ahead. Voices. Shouting. A crash. Keller rounded the corner. Weapon raised. And froze. Emma came up behind him and saw what he was seeing. Doctor. Julian Mercer stood in front of an open server rack. Tablet in one hand, USB drive in the other. His face was sheet white, eyes wide behind his glasses. Behind him, two security officers had their weapons trained on a third figure. Director Leonard Calloway, who was holding a gun. Everyone stay calm. Calloway said, voice shaking, nobody needs to get hurt. Keller didn't lower his weapon. Put it down. Director, you don't understand. I didn't have a choice. They said if I didn't cooperate. Who said Keller's voice was ice? Who are you working for? Calloway's gun hand trembled. Mercer was backing away slowly. Hands raised. Tablet forgotten. Emma's mind raced. The convoy ambush. The system cascade. The unauthorized access. It wasn't incompetence. It was sabotage. Calloway had installed a system designed to fail, had created vulnerabilities, had given someone access to classified movement orders and personnel records, and when Emma had overridden it, when she'd saved the wounded and stabilized the facility, she'd destroyed whatever operation Calloway had been running. Drop the weapon, one of the security officers said. Calloway's eyes darted between them. Between Keller and Emma and the security team and the server racks full of data he'd been trying to steal. I'm sorry, he whispered. Then he turned the gun on himself. Keller moved before Emma's brain could process what was happening. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, hit Calloway's gun arm hard enough that the weapon went flying, and had the director face down on the concrete floor before the pistol finished, clattering into the corner. Secure that. Keller barked at the nearest security officer, who scrambled to retrieve the gun while his partner kept his weapon trained on Calloway's prone form. Emma's ears were ringing, not from gunfire. The shot had never happened, but from the adrenaline dump of watching a man nearly blow his own head off 3 feet away from her. She forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way she'd been trained. Calloway wasn't fighting. He lay there with Keller's knee in his back, face pressed against cold floor, and sobbed. Not the dignified tears of a man facing consequences. The ugly, choking kind that came from realizing you'd run out of road. Get him up, Keller said. The security officers hauled Calloway to his feet. His expensive suit was rumpled now, dirt streaking the lapels. Without the careful posture and practiced authority, he looked smaller, older, breakable. Mercer stood against the server rack. Tablet still clutched to his chest. Face the color of old newspaper. I didn't know. He stammered. I swear I didn't know he was. Shut up, Keller said without looking at him. He pulled a zip tie from his tactical vest and secured Calloway's wrists behind his back. Colonel Voss. You monitoring Voss's voice came through on the security officer's radio. Troppe. What's the situation? Director Calloway just attempted suicide rather than face questioning about classified data theft. Mercer's here too. We're bringing them both up. A pause. General Keating just arrived. He's going to want answers. He'll get them. Keller looked at Emma. You armed, I'm a nurse. That wasn't the question. Emma shook her head. She'd carried a sidearm during deployments, standard issue for combat medical personnel in hostile zones, but she hadn't touched a weapon since her discharge. Hadn't wanted to. Keller unholstered a backup piece from his ankle and held it out. Take it anyway. I'm not. Someone just tried to kill himself rather than talk. That means whoever he's working for is scarier than a bullet. Keller's eyes were hard. Until we know who that is, and how deep this goes. Everyone's a potential threat. Take the gun. Reeves. Emma took it. The weight felt wrong in her hand. Foreign. Like picking up a tool you used to know how to use but had deliberately forgotten. They moved as a group back toward the stairs. Keller in front. Calloway between the 2 security officers, Mercer trailing behind like a lost dog, and Emma bringing up the rear with a pistol she didn't want, and training she couldn't shake. The facility felt different now. Hostile. Every shadow could hide someone. Every closed door could burst open with threat behind it. Emma's shoulders tensed, her peripheral vision sharpening the way it used to in Kandahar when mortar alerts went off. She hated how natural it felt. They reached the main floor and found Colonel Voss waiting with 4 more security personnel and a man who could only be General Keating, lot of 50s. Silver hair cut, military short. Uniform pressed sharp enough to cut glass. He took one look at the procession, and his expression went granite. Somebody want to explain why my facility director is in restraints? Your facility director? Keller said, was attempting to access classified medical records in sub-level 3. When confronted, he drew a weapon and attempted suicide. Keating's jaw tightened. Vosh. Get these 2 into separate interrogation rooms. No contact. No phones. No lawyers. Until I say otherwise. He turned to Keller. Your men secure evacs 10 minutes ago. They're at Mountain View by now. Good. Because this facility is compromised, and I want every sensitive case transferred out before whoever Calloway's working for realizes their operation just went sideways. Keating's gaze landed on Emma. You're Reeves. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. The nurse who saved 41 soldiers this afternoon while my director was having a breakdown. Yes, sir. Keating studied her the way a jeweler studies a diamond. Looking for flaws or value. Major Keller speaks highly of you. Says you were one of the best combat medics he ever worked with. Says, you left that behind to push pills in a civilian contract position. He paused. Want to tell me why? Emma felt everyone's eyes on her. Voss, who'd pulled her file and knew parts of the story. Keller, who'd commanded her and knew more. The security officers, who knew nothing but were listening hard, got tired of the work. Sir. Tired. Keating's tone suggested he didn't believe that for a second. You were decorated, commended, fast-tracked for officer candidacy. And you walked away to become a contract nurse, making half the pay and getting none of the respect. He stepped closer. People don't do that because they're tired. They do it because something broke. Emma's grip tightened on the pistol. With respect, sir, my reasons for discharge are my own. They were until you became the linchpin in a facility breach investigation. Keating's expression didn't soften. I need to know if you're compromised. If there's anything in your service record or your personal life that someone could leverage, because right now, you're one of the few people in this building I know isn't working for whoever turned my director into an asset. The words hit like a slap. Emma had expected questions about today, about the override, the trauma response, the protocol violations. She hadn't expected to have her loyalty questioned. I'm not compromised. Prove it. Keating gestured toward the administrative wing. You're sitting in on Calloway's interrogation. If you're clean, you'll help me break him. If you're not, you'll give yourself away trying to protect whoever he's working for. It wasn't a request. The interrogation room was exactly what Emma expected. Gray walls. Metal table. Chairs bolted to the floor. Mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Calloway sat on one side. Wrists still zip-tied. Looking at nothing, his earlier breakdown had solidified into something harder. Resignation. Maybe, or calculation. General Keating sat across from him. Colonel Voss stood by the door. Emma took a position against the wall where she could see Calloway's face, but stay out of his direct line of sight. Keating didn't waste time with pleasantries. How long have you been selling classified information? Calloway's eyes flicked up. Then away? I want a lawyer. You'll get one after you answer my questions. Keating leaned forward. The Sentinel system. That was your idea. Silence. Let me rephrase. Someone approached you with a plan to install automation that would create vulnerabilities in this facility's security architecture. Someone who knew that automated systems could be manipulated remotely, that crisis protocols could be disrupted, that patient data could be accessed during the chaos, and you agreed to it. Why Calloway's jaw worked. He looked older than he had this morning. Tired. You don't understand the pressure. I understand you put soldiers' lives at risk for money. I understand you facilitated attacks on classified convoys. I understand you compromised operational security across 4 military medical facilities. Keating's voice was ice. What I don't understand is why a man with your career, your credentials, your pension waiting at the finish line, would throw all of that away. So I'll ask again. Why? Because they have my daughter. The room went dead silent. Calloway looked up, and Emma saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not guilt. Terror. They took her 3 months ago. Said if I didn't cooperate, I'd never see her again. Said if I went to authorities, she'd disappear. Said all I had to do was approve the Sentinel contract and look the other way when certain adjustments were made to the system. Voss moved from the door. Who took her? I don't know. I never saw faces. Never heard real names. Everything was dead drops and encrypted messages. Calloway's voice cracked. They sent me proof she was alive. Photos. Videos. Told me to install the system. Told me to suppress objections. Told me to make sure the integration went through on schedule. And today Keating demanded the cascade. The convoy attack, that was them. The convoy was them. The cascade. Calloway's gaze found Emma against the wall. That was you. When you overrode the system. When you brought everything back online manually, you cut off their access. They were supposed to have 4 hours of chaos. 4 hours to extract data, cover their tracks, and disappear. You gave them 18 minutes. Emma's stomach twisted. So, they ordered you to retrieve the data manually. Keating said, break into sublevel 3. Pull the files yourself. Deliver them to save your daughter. Calloway nodded. They said if I didn't have the files by 1800 hours, she dies. Emma checked her watch. ELO CT. Less than 90 minutes. Keating stood. What files were they after? Personnel record. Black Ops medical histories. Soldiers who don't exist on paper. Calloway's voice dropped. Name is service numbers. Deployment histories. Medical vulnerabilities. Everything you'd need to identify and target special operations personnel. The implications crashed down like a collapsing building. If hostile forces got access to that data, they could identify every undercover operative, every deep cover asset, every soldier running classified missions. They could target families, exploit médical conditions, turn the military's own personnel records into a kill list. Where's your daughter? Voss asked quietly. I don't know. They move her every few days. Different locations. Always urban. Always somewhere. I can't find her without their help. Calloway looked at his bound wrists. I tried. Hired a private investigator. He disappeared. Tried to trace the messages. They threatened to cut off her fingers and mail them to me. Keating's expression was unreadable. So you sold out your country for a daughter you're not even sure is still alive. She's alive. I know she is. How? Because they keep sending proof. Latest video was this morning. She's scared. She's crying. But she's alive. Emma pushed off the wall. What time this morning? Calloway blinked at her. What? What time did you receive the video? Around 0700. Why? Emma looked at Keating. The convoy was hit at 0830. If they sent proof of life 90 minutes before the attack, they were establishing leverage, making sure Calloway stayed motivated even if things went wrong. Which they did, Voss added, because Emma stopped the cascade and the wounded made it here alive. Keating nodded slowly, which means their timeline's broken. Their data extraction failed. Their leverage is slipping. He focused on Calloway again. How are you supposed to deliver the files? Dead drop. Parking structure downtown. Level 3. Northwest corner. Leave the drive taped under the bumper of a gray Lexus. License plate. November Tango 742 Mike. And then they release her. That's the deal. You believe that? Calloway's face crumpled. I had to. Keating stepped back from the table. Colonel Voss. Get a team on that parking structure. I want eyes on that Lexus and surveillance on anyone who approaches it. Coordinate with local PD. But keep it quiet, no radio chatter. No official reports. Yes, sir. Voss pulled out her phone and stepped into the hallway. Keating looked at Emma. You're thinking something. What is it? Emma had been thinking several things. Actually, analyzing the timeline, The leverage points. The operational failures. Whoever was running Calloway had been careful, professional, but they'd made a mistake. They're not going to release her. Emma said. Calloway's head snapped up. You don't know that they kept you motivated with proof of life sent at strategic moments. They gave you explicit instructions and tight deadlines. They threatened escalation when you deviated. Emma moved closer to the table. That's not how you run a hostage negotiation. If you plan to honor the deal, that's how you run an asset until they're no longer useful. She's my daughter, and she's their leverage. The second they release her, you have nothing to lose. You go to authorities. You testify. You burn their entire operation. Emma's voice was flat. Professional. The way it used to be when she was explaining triage decisions to soldiers who didn't want to hear that their friend wasn't going to make it. They can't let her go, which means she's either already dead, or she's being held for future leverage against someone else. Calloway lunged across the table. The zip ties held, but he strained against them hard enough that the chair bolts groaned. You don't know anything. She's alive. She's Keating. Put a hand on his shoulder and shoved him back down. Reeves is right. You've been played. But that doesn't mean your daughter's dead. It means we need to find her before the 1800 deadline. Because after that, whoever's holding her has no reason to keep her breathing. The fight drained out of Calloway. He slumped in the chair, breathing hard. You can't find her. I tried. They're too careful. You tried alone. Keating said, We're not alone. He turned to Emma. What else? Emma's mind was racing. The video they sent this morning. Do you still have it? Calloway nodded mutely. Where my phone? Personal phone. Not facility issued. Vos. Keating called into the hallway. Get me Calloway's personal phone from evidence. It took 3 minutes. Voss returned with a smartphone in a sealed bag, handed it to Keating, who unlocked it using credentials Calloway provided and pulled up the video. Emma watched over his shoulder. The clip was 17 seconds long. A young woman in her early 20s, dark hair, tear-streaked face, sitting on a bare mattress in a windowless room. She was reading from a script, voice shaking. Dad, please, I'm scared. Please just do what they say. Please. The video cut off. Emma watched it 3 more times, focused on details. The mattress had a patterned geometric shapes, brownish orange. The wall behind the girl was painted cream, showing water damage in the upper right corner. Sound quality was poor, but she could hear ambient noise, distant traffic, a rhythmic mechanical sound that might have been a ventilation system or industrial equipment. Can you send this to my phone? Emma asked. Keating glanced at her. Why? Because I know someone who's very good at finding people who don't want to be found. Emma pulled out her own phone. And he owes me a favor. She was lying. The person she was thinking of didn't owe her anything. But he'd answer if she called. Because 3 years ago in a field hospital outside Mosul, she'd kept him alive long enough to get him on a helicopter despite injuries that should have killed him on the operating table. Some debts didn't require asking. Keating forwarded the video. Emma's phone buzzed. She stepped into the hallway and dialed a number she'd promised herself she'd never use again. It rang 4 times. Then a voice, rough and familiar. This is a surprise. Marcus, I need help. Obviously, you wouldn't call otherwise. Marcus Yates, former Delta Force, currently running a private security firm that specialized in extractions and intelligence gathering. The kind of work that never made it into contracts. What's the situation? Emma gave him the summary. 90 seconds. Hostage. Military facility breach. 1800 deadline. She sent him the video while she talked. Received. Marcus said, Give me 10 minutes. We don't have 10. Then we definitely don't have time for you to argue. 10 minute. I'll call you back. The line went dead. Emma stood in the hallway, phone in hand, and felt the weight of what she'd just done settling onto her shoulders. She'd brought in outside help for a military investigation, shared classified information with a civilian contractor, violated about 6 different protocols. She'd also given Calloway's daughter a chance Voss appeared at her elbow. That was risky. Yeah. Keating's going to have questions. He can get in line. Voss almost smiled. You're really committed to burning every bridge you've got. Aren't you? Emma looked at her. You pulled my file. You know what I did before I came here? You know the calls I made? She paused. I didn't leave because I was tired. I left because I was good at it. Too good. And that scared the hell out of me. And now I'm realizing you don't get to walk away just because you want to. The work follows you. Emma's phone buzzed. Text message from Marcus, preliminary analysis complete. He's fast. They went back into the interrogation room. Keating was standing by the mirror, arms crossed, watching Calloway stare at the table. He turned when Emma entered. Your contact found something. He's calling back with full analysis. But he sent a preliminary. Emma's phone rang. She answered on speaker. Marcus. You're on with General Keating. Regional Medical Command. General? Marcus's voice was all business now. Video was shot on a smartphone. Probably a burner. Background audio analysis suggests urban location. Ground floor or basement level. Traffic patterns indicate proximity to a major highway, I'm guessing interstate, based on the consistent flow. The mechanical sound in the background is an HVAC system, commercial grade. Probably industrial building. Can you narrow it down? Keating demanded, already did. Cross-reference the mattress pattern with commercial suppliers in the region. That specific design was distributed to 6 hotel chains and 3 furniture rental companies between 2019 and 2021. Water damage pattern on the wall suggests poor maintenance, and likely a building that's been vacant or underutilized. Emma could hear keyboard clicks through the phone. In the Ashford metro area, that gives us 47 possible locations. But if we filter for buildings within 2 miles of I-90, ground floor or basement access, and vacancy records in the past 6 months. A pause? 3 locations. Sending you the addresses now. Keating's phone buzzed. He pulled it out. Scanned the screen. How confident are you in this analysis? 80%. Could be higher if I had more footage or additional reference points. That'll do. Keating looked at Voss. Get tactical teams on all 3 locations. Full sweep. Simultaneous entry. 1730 hours. If she's there, I want her extracted. If she's not, I want evidence of who was using those sites. Voss nodded and left at a run. Calloway was staring at Emma like she'd performed a miracle. You found her. We found possible locations. Emma corrected. Whether she's actually there, she has to be. Calloway's voice was desperate. You can't let them hurt her. Please. Whatever I did, whatever consequences I face, she's innocent. Please. Keating's expression was stone. If she's there, we'll get her out. If she's not, you're going to tell me everything you know about the people who took her. And we're going to hunt them down anyway. Either way, you're facing charges for espionage, data theft, and compromising national security. The only question is whether you cooperate now or after we've exhausted every other option. Calloway nodded. He looked broken. I'll cooperate. Just save her. Marcus. Emma said into the phone. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is preliminary work. Could be wrong. A pause? But for what it's worth, I hope I'm not. Nobody deserves to be leverage. The line went dead. Keating checked his watch. 1,700 hours. We've got 30 minutes before their deadline. Voss's teams will hit the locations in 30 minutes. If they find the girl alive, we extract her and burn whoever's running this operation. If they don't, he looked at Calloway. We proceed with the dead drop and see who shows up to collect. You're using her as bait? Emma said quietly. I'm using every available asset to close a security breach that's cost lives and compromised ongoing operations. Keating's tone was flat. I don't like it any more than you do. But if the girl's already dead, or if she's not at any of those locations, the only lead we have left is whoever shows up to collect those files. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to say there had to be another way. but she'd made enough hard calls to know that sometimes there wasn't. The next 20 minutes crawled. Keating made calls, coordinated with tactical teams, briefed someone higher up the chain whose name Emma didn't catch. Calloway sat at the table in silence, occasionally shaking, occasionally praying under his breath. Emma stood against the wall and tried not to think about the last hostage extraction. She'd been part of a journalist held by insurgents outside Kabul. They'd been 90 seconds too late. She could still remember the smell. She oped. Voss's voice came through on Keating's radio. Teams in position, standing by for go order. Execute. Keating said. Emma's jaw clenched. Somewhere across Ashford. 3 tactical teams were breaching doors. She couldn't see it. Couldn't help. Could only wait. 60 seconds. 90. 2 minutes. Voss's voice again. First location clear. No hostage. No signs of recent occupation? Calloway's breathing got faster. Second location clear. Found evidence of used food wrappers. Bedding. But no hostage. She was here, but she's been moved. When Keating demanded, can't say for certain. Probably within the last 12 hours, based on standby. Background noise. Shouting. Third location. Third location. We have a possible confirm. We have a female hostage. Mid-20s. Matches the description. Alive. Repeat. Hostage is alive and secured. Calloway made a sound. Emma had never heard a human make before. Relief and anguish and something that might have been a prayer all compressed into one broken sob. Status Keating barked. Hostile on sight. Attempted to engage. Suspect is down. Hostage is frightened, but appears unharmed. Medics are assessing now. Get her to Riverside. Full medical eval. Protective custody. No contact with anyone outside the secure ward. Keating looked at Calloway. Your daughter's safe? Now you're going to tell me everything. And he did, over the next 40 minutes. Calloway laid out the entire operation. How he'd been approached 6 months ago by someone claiming to be a defense contractor interested in facility efficiency. How the conversations had gradually shifted from professional to personal. How they'd somehow known his daughter was traveling abroad, studying art history in Prague. How she'd disappeared from her hotel, and the videos had started arriving. How he'd been told the Sentinel system wasn't just automation, it was designed with backdoors. Remote access points that would allow data extraction during crisis events. How he was supposed to approve the contract, suppress any objections, and look the other way. While the system was installed across 4 facilities, how the convoy attack had been planned to coincide with a scheduled system upgrade that would have given the attackers 6 hours of unmonitored access. How Emma's override had destroyed that timeline and forced them to improvise. They were furious. Calloway said, after the cascade failed, after you brought everything back online, I got a message saying the timeline had moved up. I had until 1800 to deliver the files manually or they'd kill her immediately. Who gave the orders? Keating demanded. I told you. I never saw faces. Everything was encrypted channels. Burner phones. Dead drops. But you kept records. Calloway hesitated. I kept insurance. Message. Meeting notes? Recordings when I could manage it. Stored on a private server. Encrypted. Somewhere they couldn't access. Where home office? Personal computer. Offline storage. Keating looked at Voss. Send a team. Already moving. Voss said. Phone to her ear. Emma's radio, she'd been given one at some point. She couldn't remember when crackled. Torres's voice Reeves. You monitoring. She keyed the mic. Tope. You need to see something. Server room. Now. Emma looked at Keating, who nodded. She left the interrogation room and took the stairs down to sublevel 2 at a run. Torres was waiting in the server room doorway. Face grim. What is it? He pointed to one of the terminal screens. Lines of code scrolled past. Too fast for Emma to read. But she didn't need to read them to understand what she was seeing. Someone's accessing the system remotely. Torres said. Right now, through a back door I didn't even know existed. Emma's blood went cold. Can you trace it? Trying. But whoever's doing this is good. Really good. They're bouncing the signal through half a dozen proxies, and he stopped. Wait. They're not extracting data. They're uploading something. Uploading what Torres's fingers flew across the keyboard. I don't know. But it's big. Couple hundred megabytes. And it's targeting the medical equipment control systems. Emma's mind raced. Medical equipment. Life support. Ventilators. Medication dispensers. If someone could access those systems remotely, they could shut it down. She said, right now, if I cut the connection, I lose any chance of tracing shut it down. Torres slammed a hand down on the emergency disconnect. The scrolling code froze. The upload bar stopped at 73% complete. Emma grabbed the radio. General Keating, we have a problem. She explained in 30 seconds. Remote access. Upload in progress. Medical systems targeted. Keating's response was immediate. Evacuate all critical patients. Get them off any automated systems. Manual everything until we know what we're dealing with. Alarms started blaring before Emma could acknowledge. Different pattern. Not security breach. Not system failure. Medical emergency. Multiple location. Simultaneous. Emma ran. She hit Ward 7 and found chaos. Monitors showing impossible readings. IV pumps dispensing at wrong rates. Ventilators cycling erratically. And patient soldiers who'd survived combat and surgery and cascade failures now coding because the machines keeping them alive had just been turned into weapons. Emma moved on instinct. Grabbed the crash cart. Started barking orders at nurses who were frozen in shock. Manual ventilation for the soldier in bed 4. Disconnect the IV pump and calculate dosage by hand for bed 9. Override the monitor in bed 11 and check vitals manually. Other nurses snapped out of their paralysis and moved. They worked like they'd been trained to work before automation existed. Hands and eyes and brains instead of screens and sensors. But it wasn't enough. Bed 6. Flatlined. Emma started compressions. Counted them out loud. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Repeat. Someone brought the defibrillator. Emma charged it. Placed the paddles. Cleared. Shocked. Nothing. Shock again. Nothing. She kept going. Compression. Breathing. Shocking. Until her arms burned and her vision blurred, and someone doctored. Friedman pulled her away. Emma? Emma? Stop. He's gone. She looked down. The soldier in bed 6 was 24 years old, according to his chart. Name redacted. Service number redacted. History redacted. One of the convoy casualties from this morning. He'd survived the ambush. Survived surgery. Survived the cascade. And died. Because someone had turned his IV pump into a murder weapon, Emma stepped back. Her hands were shaking. The ward was stabilizing now, most patients disconnected from automated systems, nurses manually monitoring vitals, but the damage was done. Bed 6. Bed 12. Bed 3 in the next ward over. 5 patients total across the facility. All critical cases. All dead within minutes of the upload completing. Keating's voice came through every speaker in the building. All personnel. This facility is now under military lockdown. Nobody enters. Nobody leaves. Nobody makes outside contact without direct authorization. We are treating this as an active, hostile operation. Emma walked to the window. Outside, she could see military vehicles rolling up to the facility perimeter. Checkpoints being established. Soldiers in full tactical gear taking positions. Riverside Veterans Medical Complex had just become a war zone. And somewhere out there, whoever had orchestrated this was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Her radio crackled. Keating's voice. Direct channel Reeves. My office. Now. Bring Keller. She found Major Keller in the hallway outside Ward 7, coordinating with his team to secure the recovered data from Calloway's home office. He looked up when she approached. We're being summoned, she said. They walked together through corridors that felt different now. Tighter. More dangerous. Staff moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, speaking in whispers. The facility had been breached twice in one day. First by system failure, then by weaponized automation. Trust was gone. Keating's office was packed. Vos. Torres. 3 people. Emma didn't recognize wearing suits and earpieces, and a woman in civilian clothes who had intelligence analyst written all over her. Keating didn't waste time. The upload was a wiper virus disguised as a control script. It targeted life support systems for specific patients. All of them classified personnel from today's convoy. Whoever did this wanted those soldiers dead and was willing to burn their entire operation to make it happen. Why, Emma asked. The intelligence analyst spoke up. Because those soldiers saw something during the ambush. Something that identified who was attacking them. She pulled up a photo on a tablet grainy, taken from helmet cam footage. One of the wounded managed to capture this before he went down. He died 30 minutes ago when his ventilator was compromised. The photo showed armed men in tactical gear, not insurgents, not random attackers. Professional soldiers with modern equipment, and on one of their uniforms, visible, even through the grain, was a unit patch. Emma recognized American Special Forces. The room went dead, silent. We're not fighting foreign hostiles. Keating said quietly, we're fighting our own people. Emma stared at the photo. The unit patch was partially obscured by tactical webbing, but she'd seen enough of those patches during her deployments to identify it even from a bad angle. SOCOM, Special Operations Command. The kind of soldiers who didn't exist on official rosters, who deployed to places that never appeared in briefings, who answered to chains of command that zigzagged through agencies most people didn't know existed. That's impossible, Keller said, but his voice lacked conviction. The intelligence analyst, her nameplate read Morrison swiped to another image, second confirmation from a different angle. Same unit insignia. Same equipment loadout. These aren't contractors pretending to be military. They're active duty. Voss moved closer to the screen. How many of the convoy survivors saw this? All of them. The ambush lasted 4 minutes. Close quarters. Direct visual contact. Morrison's expression was grim, which is why someone went to elaborate lengths to make sure none of them survived long enough to file reports. Keating's jaw tightened. The system cascade wasn't about data theft. It was about creating chaos so they could finish what the ambush started. And when that failed, Emma said slowly, they uploaded the wiper virus to complete the mission remotely. Kill the witnesses. Destroy the evidence. Except they didn't destroy all of it. Morrison pulled up another file. The soldier who took that helmet cam footage, Sergeant Marcus Webb, managed to dump his camera's storage to a secure cloud backup before he died. We recovered it 20 minutes ago. She hit play. The video was shaky. Filmed from Webb's perspective, as he moved through what looked like a mountain pass, other soldiers visible ahead and behind. Vehicles in formation. Standard convoy security protocols. Then the first explosion. Shouts. Gunfire. The camera swinging wildly as Webb took cover behind a disabled truck, and there, clear as day for 3 seconds before the camera was hit by shrapnel. The attacking force, 12 men, in full tactical gear, moving with the kind of precision that only came from extensive training. One of them turned toward the camera, face partially visible beneath a helmet. Morrison froze the frame, enhanced it. The image pixelated, then sharpened. Emma's stomach dropped. She knew that face. Not personally, but she'd seen the file during a classified briefing 2 years ago. Captain Raymond Shaw, Special Activities Division. Decorated, connected, intouchable, and apparently running Black Ops attacks on American military convoys. Who else knows about this? Keating demanded, just us. The video came through encrypted channels directly to my team. I haven't forwarded it up the chain yet because I wanted to verify authenticity first. Morrison closed the file. But if this is real, if active duty SOCOM personnel are conducting hostile operations against their own forces, we're looking at something bigger than a facility breach. We're looking at treason, Voss said flatly. The word hung in the air like smoke. Keating turned to one of the suits. Get me a secure line to JSOC. No intermediaries. I want direct contact with someone who can authorize a full investigation without it leaking to whoever's running Shaw. The suit nodded and left immediately. Keller was staring at the frozen image of Shaw. I know him. Worked with him on a joint op in Syria. Maybe 5 years back. He was solid. Professional. Not the kind of soldier who goes rogue. People change, Emma said. Or they were never what you thought they were. Keller didn't argue. Morrison pulled up a new file. We analyzed Calloway's insurance records, the encrypted files recovered from his home office. Most of it's communication logs. Meeting transcripts. Payment transfers. But there's one entry that stands out. She read from the screen. Meeting notation from 4 months ago. Calloway writes, told them the Sentinel timeline was too aggressive. They said timeline non-negotiable. Asked about contingencies if facility staff raised objections. They said objections would be neutralized. Neutralized how Voss asked. Doesn't specify. But 2 weeks after that meeting, the charge nurse who ran Ward 7, before Emma nurse, Patricia Dunmore, was involved in a single-car accident. Vehicle went off the road during her commute home. She survived but sustained injuries severe enough that she couldn't return to work. Emma felt ice crawl down her spine. Dunmore was the one who sent me to that first briefing. She said Calloway specifically requested a representative from every department. He requested someone he could control. Morrison said, someone new. Someone who wouldn't know the systems well enough to spot the vulnerabilities. But instead he got you. The pieces were falling into place. Calloway had been trying to staff the facility with people who wouldn't question the Sentinel installation. When Dunmore had proven too experienced, too observant, she'd been removed. Emma was supposed to be her replacement, inexperienced. Easy to dismiss. Incapable of disrupting the operation. Except Emma had disrupted it anyway. They'd been cleaning house for months. Emma said, getting rid of anyone who might interfere, installing people who'd look the other way or were too scared to speak up. Which means they were more like Calloway. Keating said, people being leveraged, people being threatened, people who know something's wrong but are too terrified to act, or people who are willingly participating. Keller added, Shaw didn't go rogue alone. He's got a team, resources, operational support, someone high enough up the chain to authorize missions and redirect equipment without raising flags. The second suit returned, General. I have JSOC on Secure Line 3. General Harriman is standing by. Keating moved to his desk and picked up a phone that looked like it had more encryption than the average satellite. Harriman, we have a situation, he summarized in 90 seconds. The convoy ambush, the system breach, the murdered soldiers, the video evidence showing SOCOM personnel conducting the attack. Emma couldn't hear the other side of the conversation. But she watched Keating's expression go from stone to granite. When he hung up, he looked like a man who'd just been told the building was on fire and all the exits were locked. Harriman's initiating a full investigation, but it's going to take time to establish chains of custody, verify evidence, build cases that'll hold up under legal scrutiny. Keating's voice was flat. Time. We don't have. If Shaw knows his cover's blown, he'll disappear, and anyone connected to him will either run or destroy evidence. Then we force his hand, Emma said. Everyone turned to look at her. Shaw thinks his operation succeeded. He uploaded the wiper virus, killed the witnesses, covered his tracks. As far as he knows, there's no evidence linking him to anything. Emma moved toward the screen showing Shaw's frozen face. But if we let it leak that Webb's helmet cam footage survived, that we have video proof of SOCOM involvement, Shaw will have to respond. He'll either try to destroy the evidence or eliminate the people who have access to it. You want to use ourselves as bait. Voss said, I want to make him commit to a course of action that exposes his network. Right now he's hidden, protected. If we can make him move against us directly, we can trace his resources, identify his support structure, and burn the whole thing down. Keller shook his head. That's suicide. Shaw's got training, equipment, and a team. We don't even know how many people he's working with. We know they're desperate enough to murder 5 soldiers in a military medical facility. Emma countered. which means they're already committed, already exposed. They just don't know it yet. Keating studied her. You've done this before. Drawn out hostile forces by making yourself a target. It wasn't a question. But Emma answered anyway. Twice. Once in Kandahar, once outside Mosul. Both times we needed to identify enemy positions before they could regroup. Both times it worked. Both times you were in a combat zone with military support. This is American soil. These are American soldiers. Rules of engagement are completely different. The rules changed the moment they attacked that convoy. Emma's voice was hard. They chose this. We're just responding. Morrison cleared her throat. If we're going to do this, we need to control the information flow. Make sure the leak appears authentic but traces back to us so we can monitor who accesses it. I can handle that, Torres said from the doorway. Nobody had noticed him arrive. But there he was, looking exhausted and determined. Create a vulnerability in our network that looks accidental. Plant the helmet cam footage where it'll be found by anyone monitoring our systems. Make it look like we're trying to secure it but failed. And then what Voss demanded, we sit here and wait for Shaw to attack the facility. We evacuate everyone who doesn't need to be here. Keating said slowly, transfer remaining patients to Mountain View under guard. Keep only essential personnel volunteers who understand the risk. I'll stay, Emma said immediately. So will I. Keller added. Voss didn't hesitate. Sama. Torres nodded. I'm not leaving my server room in someone else's hands. Morrison looked at the suits, who both shook their heads. We're intelligence, not tactical, but we can provide remote support. Keating made his decision. All right, we do this carefully. Morrison, coordinate with Torres. On the information leak, make it convincing but traceable. Kela, I want a defensive perimeter established. This facility becomes a hardened position. Voss, start evacuations immediately, but keep it quiet. If Shaw's monitoring us, we don't want him to know we're clearing out. What about Calloway? Emma asked. He stays in custody. He's leverage if we need it. And he's a witness. If this goes to trial, Keating checked his watch. We have maybe 6 hours before Shaw realizes something's wrong. Let's make them count. The next 4 hours were controlled chaos. Patients were moved out in small groups, transported under guard to Mountain View, and 2 other facilities deemed secure. The evacuations were disguised as routine transfers, nothing that would raise alarms if someone was watching. Staff were given the option to leave or stay. Most chose to leave, especially once they understood what staying meant. 23 people volunteered to remain. Emma knew some of them. Dr. Friedman, Nurse Stevens, who'd run to the pharmacy during the cascade, a handful of security personnel who'd served in combat zones and understood what it meant to hold a position against hostile forces. Torres worked with Morrison to plant the bait. They created a file labeled Convoy Ambush Evidence, classified, and placed it in a supposedly secure directory that was actually designed to be found by anyone with moderate hacking skills. The file contained Webb's helmet cam footage, analysis reports, and enough corroborating data to make it look legitimate. Then they waited. Emma spent the time checking defensive positions. The facility wasn't designed to be a fortress, but it had advantages. Limited entry points, clear sight lines across the grounds, secure areas that could be locked down if necessary. Keller's team set up monitoring equipment, established communication protocols, and prepared contingencies. A 22 47. Morrison's voice came through on the tactical channel. We have activity. Someone just accessed the planted file. Emma was in Ward 7, sitting in the empty room where 5 soldiers had died that afternoon. She keyed her radio. Can you trace it? Working on it. They're routing through proxies. But Torres is tracking the digital fingerprint. A pause. Got it. Access originated from a military network node at Fort Preston. That's Shaw's home base. How long until he acts? Keating asked over the channel. Unknown. But if he follows standard protocol, he'll verify the intel first, then move to neutralize the source. Could be hours. Could be minutes. It was 37 minutes. Emma was doing a final sweep of the east wing when every light in the facility went out. Not a cascade this time. Not a system failure. Someone had cut the main power feed. Emergency lighting kicked in, painting everything red. Emma's radio crackled with multiple voices, reporting the same thing. Power loss. Perimeter sensors offline. Backup generators struggling to compensate. Then Keller's voice, sharp and urgent. Contact. West perimeter. Multiple hostiles approaching in tactical formation. Count as 8. Repeat 8 tangos. Full combat loadout. Emma ran toward the central atrium where Keating had established the command position. She found him coordinating responses. Voss at his shoulder with a tablet showing security feeds. They're not trying to be subtle. Voss said, "This is a direct assault." On the screens, Emma could see figures moving through the darkness outside. Professional. Coordinated. Exactly what you'd expect from special operations soldiers who'd trained for years to breach hardened targets. All personnel. Defensive positions. Keating ordered. Rules of engagement. These are American soldiers, but they're actively hostile. Return fire only when fired upon. Prioritize survival and evidence preservation. Emma checked the pistol. Keller had given her hours ago. Still loaded. Still something she didn't want to use. The first explosion shook the building. Not close, but loud enough to rattle windows. Somewhere on the west side, a breaching charge had blown open a door. They're in. Keller reported. Corridors are smoke-filled. Thermal imaging is showing 4 contacts moving toward the administrative wing. That's where we have the server room. Torres said over the radio. They're going for the original footage. Let them. Keating said. Morrison. You ready? Standing by. Emma understood the plan. Let Shaw's team penetrate deep enough to commit. Then trap them with evidence of the assault. Every camera in the facility was recording. Every action they took was being documented. But plans only worked if everyone survived them. Another explosion. Closer this time. Emma heard gunfire-controlled bursts. Suppressed weapons. Someone was shooting back. The defenders weren't just rolling over. Contact in the east stairwell. A voice Emma didn't recognize reported. 1 hostile down. 2 retreating. West corridor is clear. They're bypassing patient areas and heading straight for admin. Shaw's team knew the facility layout. Had probably studied the blueprints. They planned their approach. This wasn't improvised. This was a military operation executed with precision. Emma moved through the hallways. Keeping low. Weapon ready. She passed empty rooms. Abandoned equipment. The ghosts of patients who'd been evacuated hours ago. Ward 7 was ahead. She could secure it. Establish a fallback position if a figure stepped out of a doorway 10 feet in front of her. Emma raised her weapon. The figure did the same. For 1 frozen second, they stared at each other across the red-lit corridor. The man wore full tactical gear, face obscured by a helmet, and night vision goggles, but his stance was wrong. Tu hesitant. Not the aggressive posture of someone committed to the assault. Don't, Emma said quietly. The man's weapon dipped slightly. You're Reeves. She didn't lower her gun. How do you know that? Shaw briefed us. Said you were the primary target. The one who compromised the operation. His voice was young. Mid-20s? Maybe? Said you had evidence that could destroy everything. He was right. He also said you were just a nurse. That you didn't understand what you were interfering with. He was wrong about that. The man's weapon lowered further. This isn't what I signed up for. We were told this was a sanctioned operation. National security. Preventing classified intel from falling into enemy hands. And you believed him. I believed my commanding officer. But there was doubt in his voice now. We just assaulted an American medical facility. Killed soldiers who were already wounded. That's not sanctioned. That's not anything except murder. Emma took a half step forward. Then walk away. Put down your weapon and walk away. I can't. Shaw will. Shaw's operation is already burned. We have video evidence. We have testimony. We have everything we need to bring down his entire network. She kept her voice steady, professional, the way she used to talk to soldiers who were scared and hurt and didn't know who to trust. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you become a witness who helps put him away. The soldier's weapon dropped completely. He reached up and pulled off his helmet. Young face. Scared eyes. There are 6 of us. Shaw's team. Most of them don't know the full picture. They think they're following orders. Are they? Some are. 2 of them, Garrett and Pierce, they know exactly what Shaw's doing. They helped plan the convoy ambush. The rest of us were told we were securing leaked intelligence. Emma's radio crackled. Keller's voice, Reeves. What's your position? She didn't take her eyes off the soldier. East Wing. Ward 7 entrance. I've got one of Shaw's team here. He's surrendering. A pause? Confirmed. Emma looked at the young man. What's your name, Lieutenant Daniel Foster? Lieutenant Foster just told me there are 6 hostiles total. 2 are willing participants. 4 were deceived. She paused. He's willing to help us end this. Another pause. Then Keating's voice. Bring him to command. If he's lying, we'll deal with it. If he's not, we just got our advantage. Emma gestured with her weapon. Move. Hands visible. Any sudden movements and I will shoot you. Foster nodded and started walking. Emma followed 3 paces behind. Weapon trained on his back. Every nerve. Screaming that this could be a trap. They made it to the command center without incident. Keating and Voss were waiting. Weapons drawn. 2 security officers immediately grabbed Foster. Searched him. Stripped his tactical vest and communications gear. Talk. Keating ordered. Foster talked. He laid out Shaw's operation from his perspective, how they'd been told about a leak in classified convoy operations, how they were supposed to neutralize the source, how the story had gradually shifted from securing intelligence to eliminating witnesses. Where's Shaw now? Keller demanded. Server room. He went with Garrett to destroy the original footage. Pierce is covering their exit with 2 others, Martinez and Kim. Martinez and Kim don't know about the murders. They think this is a sanctioned retrieval operation. How do we reach them? Foster pulled a radio from his pocket that the security officers had missed. Shared frequency. If I call them, they'll respond. Voss looked at Keating. We can use this. Get them to stand down before anyone else dies. Or it's a trap. Emma said. Shaw could be listening. Could be waiting for us to reveal our position. It's a risk. Either way, Keating made his decision. Do it. Call Martinez and Kim. Tell them Foster wants to extract. That the operation is compromised. See how they respond. Foster keyed the radio. Martinez. Kim. This is Foster. We need to abort. Mission parameters have changed. Recommend immediate extraction. Static. Then a woman's voice. Foster. Where the hell are you Shaws ordering radio silence? Shaw's orders are compromised. This isn't what we were briefed for. Get out while you can. More static. Voices in the background. Muffled. Then Foster. Shaw wants your position. Says you're to hold until he signals. Foster looked at Keating, who shook his head. Foster didn't respond. The radio crackled again. Different voice this time. Alda? Harder. Lieutenant Foster. This is Captain Shaw. I'm ordering you to report to the server room immediately. That's a direct order. Foster's hand tightened on the radio. Emma watched his face. Watched him make the decision that would define everything that came after. Negative. Sir. I'm surrendering to facility command. The operation is illegal and I'm not participating further. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then Shaw's voice. Cold as winter. You just killed yourself. Lieutenant, you and everyone in that building. The connection cut off. Emma's blood turned to ice. Everyone down. The explosion came from below. Massive. Deafening. The floor buckled. Ceiling tiles rained down. And Emma found herself on the ground with ringing ears and dust in her lungs. When the world stopped spinning, she looked up to see Keating pulling himself to his feet. Blood running from a cut on his forehead. Voss was helping Foster up. The security officers were dazed but moving. "What the hell was?" that Voss shouted over the ringing. Torres's voice, shaky but functional, came through the radio server room. They rigged it with explosives. The whole sublevel just collapsed. Emma pushed herself up, checked her body for injuries. Everything hurt, but nothing felt broken. Shaw, if he was down there, he's buried now. But Emma knew better. Shaw hadn't been in the server room. He'd sent Garrett to place the charges while he positioned himself somewhere safe. This was his exit strategy. Destroy the evidence, eliminate the witnesses, and disappear in the chaos. She grabbed her radio. "Martinez. Kim. This is Nurse Emma Reeves. Shaw just destroyed the server room with your teammate Garrett inside. He's cleaning house. If you don't surrender right now, you're next on his list." No response. Emma tried again. "Shaw used you. He's been running an illegal operation, killing American soldiers to cover it up. You can either go down with him or you can help us bring him to justice. Your choice." Static. Then Martinez's voice, uncertain. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" "Because Shaw just blew up his own man rather than risk him being captured. Because he's currently trying to kill everyone in this building, including you. Because if he escapes and you don't, you're going to take the fall for everything he's done." More silence. Then a different voice. "Pierce. Martinez. Kim. Don't listen to Hare. Shaw's got an exit plan. We extract together." "Where is he?" Martinez demanded. "Where's Shaw right now?" Pierce didn't answer. "He left you." Emma said, "He's already gone, and you're the ones who'll face charges for this assault." She's lying. Pierce insisted. Shaw wouldn't. A gunshot. Single round. Suppressed. Then Pierce's voice cut off mid-word. Martinez came back on the radio. Breathing hard. "We're surrendering. Don't shoot." Coming out with hands up, two figures emerged from the west corridor 30 seconds later, both in tactical gear, both with weapons on the ground and hands raised high. Security officers moved in. Secured them. Searched them. "Where's Pierce Keating?" demanded Martinez. A woman in her late 20s with exhaustion written across her face. Shook her head. "Shaw shot him. Right in front of us. Said he was compromised. Said anyone who surrendered was a traitor." "Where did Shaw go?" "Helipad. He's got extraction waiting." "Private contractor Bird?" "No military markings. Keller was already moving." "How long he left 3 minutes ago?" "Said he'd be airborne in 5. Emma ran? Didn't think about it. Didn't wait for orders. Just ran toward the stairs that led to the roof. Behind her, she heard Keller shouting. Heard footsteps following. But she didn't slow down. The helipad was on the northeast corner of the facility. Emma hit the roof access door at full speed, burst through into cold night air, and saw the helicopter already spooling up, rotors beginning to turn. A figure climbing into the passenger compartment. Captain Raymond Shaw. He saw her, made eye contact across 30 yards of open rooftop, and smiled. Emma raised her weapon. "Don't move." Shaw kept climbing. The helicopter's engines roared louder. Emma fired. Once, twice, aiming for the helicopter's tail rotor. The way she'd been taught during evac training, the rounds sparked off metal but didn't disable anything. The helicopter lifted off. Emma fired again. The magazine emptied. The helicopter continued rising, banking away from the facility. Shaw, visible through the open door. Then Kela was beside here, shoulder-mounted launcher in his hands. "Get down." Emma dropped. Kela fired. The rocket streaked across the night sky, trailing smoke. For one frozen second, Emma thought it would miss. Then it connected with the helicopter's tail boom in a flash of orange and white. The aircraft spun. The engine screamed. It tried to compensate, tried to recover. But the damage was catastrophic. The helicopter dropped like a stone, rotors tearing themselves apart, and crashed into the parking lot 200 yards from the facility. The explosion lit up the night. Emma stood slowly, ears ringing again, and watched the wreckage burn. Somewhere in that fire was Shaw, along with whatever pilot he'd hired, whatever evidence he'd been carrying, whatever final escape plan he'd constructed, all of it gone. Keating appeared on the rooftop. Radio in Hunt. Fire and rescue are responding. Local PD is establishing a perimeter. He looked at the burning wreckage. That's going to take some explaining. Tell them the truth. Emma said. Tell them an American officer attempted to flee after conducting an illegal military operation that resulted in multiple deaths. Tell them he died resisting apprehension. That's exactly what I'm going to tell them. Keating looked at her. You all right? Emma wasn't sure how to answer that. She'd just watched a man die. A man she'd helped kill. An American soldier who'd betrayed everything the uniform was supposed to represent. I'll manage, she said. The next 6 hours blurred together. Federal investigators arrived. Military police secured the facility. The wounded from Shaw's assault, 3 security officers and one of the volunteers who'd stayed behind, were treated and stabilized. Martinez, Kim, and Foster were taken into custody for questioning. Calloway was transferred to a federal holding facility. The facility itself looked like a war zone. Blown-out sections of wall, smoke damage. Emergency lighting still running because the main power was too damaged to restore immediately. But it was quiet now. No more explosions. No more gunfire. Just the aftermath. Emma found herself in Ward 7 again as dawn broke. The empty beds, the silent monitors, the ghosts of patients who'd lived and died in this room, footsteps behind her. She turned to find Colonel Voss. General Keating wants to see you. Voss said, official debrief. They're convening an investigation board at 0800. I'll be there. Voss didn't leave. She stood in the doorway, looking at Emma with an expression that might have been respect or might have been something else entirely. You saved this facility twice. In 24 hours. Voss said quietly. Once from incompetence. Once from treason. That's... I don't have words for what that is. I was just doing don't say your job. Don't diminish what you did. Voss stepped into the room. You stood up when everyone else sat down. You questioned authority when it would have been easier to stay quiet. You put yourself in the line of fire to protect people you barely knew. She paused. That's not a job. That's who you are. Emma looked away. I didn't want any of this. I know. That's what makes it matter. Voss moved toward the door. The investigation's going to take months. They'll dig into everything Shaw's network. Calloway's leverage. The Sentinel system. All of it. Your name is going to be attached to every report. Every finding. Every consequence. I know. Good. Because when this is over, when the smoke clears and the bodies are counted, there are going to be people who want to bury you for embarrassing them, for exposing their failures, for being right when they were wrong. Voss stopped in the doorway. But there are also going to be people who remember what you did, who understand that without you, this facility would have burned, and Shaw would have gotten away with murder. She left. Emma stood alone in Ward 7 and watched the sun rise over Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, families were waking up, going about their lives, unaware that a battle had been fought in a place they'd never heard of, by people whose names would never appear in headlines. Her radio crackled. Reeves. This is Keating. We found something in the wreckage. You need to see this. Emma walked to the crash site. Now surrounded by federal investigators and military personnel, the helicopter was a burned-out skeleton, still smoking in places. Keating stood near the wreckage with Morrison, both of them looking at something on a tablet. Shaw had a laptop. Morrison said without preamble, partially destroyed. But our techs recovered fragments of the hard drive, enough to reconstruct some files. What kind of files? Emma asked. Communication. Meeting logs. Financial records. Morrison looked up. Shaw wasn't working alone. He had backing from someone high up, someone with access to black budget funding and authority to redirect military resources, who, we don't know yet. The names are redacted or coded, But there are references to oversight and command authorization and payment transfers that trace back to accounts we're still identifying. She paused. This goes higher than we thought. Higher than Shaw. Higher than anyone we've identified so far. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. So this isn't over. No. Keating said, it's not. Shaw was a weapon. Someone else was pulling the trigger. And whoever that is just watched their operation collapse in spectacular fashion. He looked at her. They're going to come after everyone involved in exposing this. Which means you... Vos... Kela... Torres. Everyone who helped bring Shaw down, let them come. Emma said quietly. That's not bravado I'm hearing. Is it? No, sir. It's just... I'm tired of running. Tired of trying to be something I'm not. She looked at the mountains, at the facility, at the evidence of what they'd survived. For 6 months, I pretended I could leave the soldier behind. Turns out you can't. The work follows you. The skills follow you. The decisions follow you. So what are you going to do? Emma turned to face him directly. Whatever it takes to finish this. Shaw's dead. But his operation wasn't dismantled. It was disrupted. The people behind him are still out there. Still dangerous. Still capable of doing this again to someone else. Keating studied her. I'm offering you a position. Official reinstatement. Medical operations officer attached to regional command. You'd have authority to investigate similar threats. Audit, facility, security, and coordinate responses to compromised operations. That's not a medical position. That's intelligence work. It's both. And it needs someone who understands medicine, military operations, and how to spot the kind of systemic vulnerabilities Shaw exploited. Keating's expression softened slightly. It needs you. Lieutenant Reeves, if you're willing. Emma had walked away from the military because she'd been tired of making impossible decisions. Tired of the wait? Tired of watching people die because she hadn't been fast enough or smart enough or ruthless enough. But standing here, looking at the wreckage of Shaw's escape attempt and the facility she'd helped save twice, she realized something. The decisions didn't get easier when you walked away. They just became someone else's burden. And sometimes, that someone else wasn't capable of carrying it. I'll take the position, Emma said. On one condition, name it. Full autonomy. When I identify a threat, I act on it. I don't wait for approval from people who prioritize politics over lives. I don't play nice with administrators who care more about reputation than security. She held his gaze. You're giving me authority? I'm going to use it, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Keating almost smiled. I'd expect nothing less. Welcome back. Lieutenant. He left to coordinate with the investigators. Emma stood by the wreckage and pulled out her phone. She had calls to make, people to notify, reports to file. But first, she opened her contacts and found a number she'd been avoiding for 8 months. Marcus Yates answered on the second ring, twice in one day. This is becoming a habit. I need another favor. Emma said, Of course you do. What now? Shaw had backing. Someone with resources and authority. They're still out there, and they're going to come after everyone who exposed the operation. You want protection? I want intelligence. I want to know who Shaw was working for before they make their next move. Emma watched investigators photographing the crash site. Can you do that? A pause. That's going to require resources, money, time, probably some activities that fall into gray legal territory. I'm aware, and you're asking anyway. I'm asking because you're the best at this and because I can't trust anyone inside the system until I know how deep the corruption goes. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You're different than you were. Before, when you left, people change. No, you didn't change. You just stopped pretending. She could hear the smile in his voice. All right, I'll die. But Emma, this is going to get messy. Whoever backed Shaw isn't going to appreciate you hunting them. Good. I'm counting on that. She ended the call and turned back toward the facility. The sun was fully up now. burning off the morning mist. In the distance, she could see military vehicles arriving with reinforcements and support personnel. The investigation was beginning in earnest. Emma started walking back toward the building, back toward Ward 7, where empty beds waited, back toward the work she'd tried to leave behind and had instead rediscovered. Her radio crackled one more time. Torres's voice Reeves. "You're going to want to see this. I found something in the system logs. Something that was buried deep." "What is it?" "A back door. Not from Shaw's team. This one's older. Installed about 8 months ago." Torres's voice was grim. "Right around the time you started working here." Emma's steps slowed. 8 months ago. The week after she'd been hired. The week after she tried to disappear into anonymity. "Can you trace it?" she asked. "Already did. It routes through multiple proxies. But the original installation came from inside the facility. Someone with administrative access. A pause. Someone who knew exactly who you were before you ever walked through the door." Emma stopped walking entirely. Stared at the facility entrance. At the place she'd thought was a refuge but had actually been something else entirely. She'd been marked from the beginning. Watched. Monitored. Not because she was a threat, but because someone had known she would be. Had known that the woman who'd walked away from military service would be drawn back in when lives were at stake. Someone had placed her here deliberately. Waited for her to do exactly what she'd done. The question was why her radio crackled again. Different voice this time. Older. Female. One she didn't recognize. Lieutenant Reeves? "This is Deputy Director Samantha Cross. Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to talk, Anaya. Right now." "Alone?" Emma's hand tightened on the radio. "About what? About why you were really hired at Riverside. About who's been watching you for the past 8 months. About the operation you just disrupted. That was never about Shaw at all." A pause. He was the distraction. "Lieutenant, the real threat is still active. And you just painted a target on yourself. That's going to bring it straight to your door." The radio went silent. Emma stood in the morning sunlight, surrounded by evidence of battles won and bodies counted, and realized with absolute certainty that everything she'd survived in the past 24 hours had been prologue. The real fight was about to begin. Emma didn't move for 5 full seconds. The radio felt heavier in her hand than it had any right to. Around her, investigators continued their work. Photographing wreckage, cataloging evidence, completely unaware that the woman standing 20 feet away had just been told everything she'd survived was a setup. She keyed the radio. "Where are you?" "Administration building. 3rd floor. Conference room C. Come alone. If you bring Keating or anyone else. I disappear and you never get answers." The connection died. Emma looked toward the facility. Every instinct screamed trap. But instincts weren't always right. And sometimes the only way forward was straight through the danger. She walked. The administration building had been cleared during the evacuations. Left dark and empty while the rest of the facility transformed into a crime scene. Emma's footsteps echoed in stairwells that had been full of panic yesterday. She kept her hand near her weapon. Someone had given her a fresh magazine after the rooftop. She couldn't remember who. And climbed to the 3rd floor. Conference room C was at the end of a hallway lined with offices whose doors stood open like empty mouths. Emma approached slowly, checking corners, watching for movement. The conference room door was closed but unlocked. She pushed it open. A woman sat at the head of the table. Late 40s, dark hair pulled back severe, wearing a pantsuit that cost more than Emma's monthly salary, no weapon visible. But that didn't mean unarmed. On the table in front of her sat a tablet and a thick folder. Deputy Director Samantha Cross looked up as Emma entered. "Close the door." Emma did, but stayed near it. "Exit route. Always maintain an exit route. You're not recording this." Cross said, "It wasn't a question. You came alone like I asked. Which means you're either brave or stupid. I'm betting on brave. What do you want?" "To tell you a story." Cross gestured to a chair. "Sit. This is going to take a few minutes and you're going to want to be sitting when I'm done." Emma remained standing. "Start talking." Cross smiled without warmth. 8 months ago, Defense intelligence flagged an anomaly in military medical facility operations. Nothing obvious. Just small inconsistencies. Supply requisitions that didn't match patient loads. Personnel transfers that seemed random but followed a pattern when you looked close enough. Money moving through accounts that shouldn't have existed. You were investigating corruption? We were investigating what we thought was corruption. Turns out it was worse. Cross opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. Pushed it across the table. Recognize him. Emma looked. The photo showed a man in his 60s, distinguished, wearing a general's uniform with enough ribbons to stock a parade. She didn't recognize the face, but she recognized the rank insignia. Lieutenant General Brian Hendricks. Cross said, Deputy Commander of Special Operations. 32 years of service. Decorated. Respected. Connected to every major military operation in the past decade. She paused. Also the one who authorized Shaw's operation and a dozen others like it. Emma's blood went cold. Shaw was following orders. Shaw was following orders he thought were legitimate. Hendricks has been running unauthorized operations for at least 3 years. Maybe longer. Using special operations personnel for missions that were never approved. Never documented. Never reported. Convoy ambushes. Facility breaches. Assassinations disguised as training accidents. Why? That's what we've been trying to figure out. Cross pulled out another document. Hendricks has connections to 3 private military contractors, 2 defense industry lobbying firms, and a network of shell companies that trace back to foreign intelligence services. We think he's been selling operational intelligence convoy routes, personnel assignments, facility vulnerabilities to the highest bidder. Emma felt sick. How many soldiers died because of him? We don't know. Could be dozens. Could be hundreds. Cross's expression was granite. What we do know is that he's been very careful. Every operation has plausible deniability. Every death looks legitimate. Every paper trail leads to someone else. Except now it doesn't. Emma said, Shaw's laptop. The files Morrison recovered? They trace back to Hendricks. Some of them do. But not enough to build a case that'll survive legal scrutiny. Hendricks has lawyers, connections, and enough political capital to weather almost anything we throw at him. Cross leaned forward. Unless we can prove he directly ordered specific operations with full knowledge they were illegal. And the only way to do that is to get him to commit to another operation. One we control from the beginning. Emma understood where this was going. You want to use me as bait? Again, I want to give you a choice. Cross pulled the tablet toward her and turned it so Emma could see the screen. 8 months ago, when we started investigating, we needed someone inside a compromised facility, someone with medical credentials, combat experience, and a low enough profile that they wouldn't trigger alerts. Someone who'd walk away from military service but might be drawn back in under the right circumstances. The screen showed Emma's military file, her deployments, her commendations, her discharge papers, and beneath all of that, a DIA recruitment assessment dated 9 months ago. You targeted me from the beginning. Emma said slowly. We recruited you. There's a difference. Cross closed the file. We arranged for your contract position at Riverside. We knew the facility was compromised. Callaway had already been leveraged. The Sentinel system was being installed. Shaw was positioning his team. We needed someone who could spot the vulnerabilities and disrupt the operation without knowing they were part of a larger investigation. Why not just tell me? Because if you knew, your behavior would have changed. You'd have been looking for evidence instead of just doing your job. Hendricks would have spotted the investigation and shut everything down. Cross's voice softened slightly. We needed you to be authentic. To genuinely be a nurse who saw problems and tried to fix them. Everything you did standing up in that briefing, overriding the system, coordinating the trauma response that was you making the choices we hoped you'd make but couldn't guarantee. Emma wanted to be angry, wanted to feel violated by the manipulation, but she understood the logic, understood why it had to happen this way. What happens now, she asked. Now Hendricks knows his operation failed. He knows Shaw's dead. His network's exposed. And investigators are picking through the wreckage. He's going to do one of 2 things, run or consolidate. Cross stood. If he runs, we might never catch him. He's got resources, safe houses, extraction plans. But if he consolidates, if he tries to eliminate the remaining threats to his operation, he'll make mistakes. And when he does, we'll be waiting. Who's the remaining threat? You are. You exposed Shaw? You survived the assault. You have access to evidence and testimony that could link back to him if the investigation goes deep enough. Cross moved toward the window, looked out at the facility grounds. He's going to come after you. Lieutenant? Not immediately. Not while the facility's swarming with federal agents. But soon, and when he does, we need to be ready to document everything. Emma joined her at the window. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the morning mist. You're asking me to keep being bait until Hendricks takes the shot. I'm asking you to finish what you started. We've got Calloway in custody, willing to testify. We've got Foster, Martinez, and Kim providing statements. We've got Shaw's laptop with partial evidence. What we don't have is the smoking gun that ties Hendricks to illegal orders. Cross turned to face her. But if he makes a move against you personally, if he authorizes your elimination using military resources or personnel we can track, then we have him. How long? Days. Maybe a week? Hendricks is methodical, but he's also under pressure. His operation collapsed in spectacular fashion. His backers, whoever's funding this, are going to demand answers. He'll need to show he's still in control. Emma thought about the soldiers who died in Ward 7. Thought about Sergeant Webb and the helmet cam footage that had cost him his life. Thought about Calloway's daughter. Used as leverage to turn a good man into a traitor. What do I get out of this? She asked. Besides being a target, full reinstatement with rank advancement. Official recognition for your actions during the crisis. And when this is over, when Hendricks is in custody, you get to decide what comes next. You want to go back to civilian life. We make it happen. Full pension. Clean record. You want to stay in intelligence work. We've got positions that need someone with your skill set. And if Hendricks succeeds, if he kills me before you get your evidence, Cross didn't flinch. Then we prosecute him for murder instead of treason. Either way, he goes down. The only question is whether you're there to see it. Emma looked at the woman who'd manipulated her life for 8 months, who'd placed her in danger without consent, who was now offering her a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I'm in, Emma said, but I do this my way. No handlers watching my every move. No restrictions on how I operate. You want Hendricks. Then trust me to get him. Cross extended her hand. Deal. They shook. Emma's grip was firm. Cross's was firmer. One more thing. Emma said, when this is over, when Hendricks is finished, you're going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Not just about him, about Calloway. About the soldiers who were manipulated into following illegal orders. About the systems that failed. And the people who tried to fix them. That's a lot of exposure. A lot of embarrassment for people in high places. Good. Maybe next time they'll think twice before prioritizing reputation over lives? Cross almost smiled. You're going to be a problem. Lieutenant Reeves? That's what they keep telling me. Emma left the conference room and made her way back to ground level. The facility was busier now, more investigators, more military police, more people asking questions and taking statements. She spotted Keating near the command center. Coordinating with someone in a suit, he saw her approaching and excused himself. Where have you been? Getting recruited? Emma said. Again, she told him about Cross, about the DIA investigation, about Hendricks and the choice she'd just made. Keating listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each sentence. They used you, he said when she finished. They gave me a job and I did it. Everything else is just context. Emma looked at the facility, at the evidence of everything they'd survived. Cross is right about one thing. Hendricks is going to make a move. And when he does, we need to be ready. What do you need? A team, small, people I trust who can respond fast if things go sideways. Keating nodded. Keller and Voss are both staying on for the investigation. Torres refuses to leave until the server room is rebuilt. That's 4, including you. That'll work. And if Hendricks sends more than 4 people, then we improvise. Emma's jaw tightened. I'm done running. General, I'm done hiding. At me. Letting people like Hendricks use good soldiers for bad operations and then discarding them when it's convenient. If he wants me dead, he can come try, but he's going to find out that contract nurses hit back. Keating studied her for a long moment. You've changed. Since yesterday morning. Since this whole thing started. Yeah, I stopped pretending. Emma pulled out her phone and checked the time. Lingzhou Sansi. How long until the investigation board convenes? 23 minutes. Then I've got time for one thing first. She walked toward 7. The room was still empty. Still haunted by the soldiers who died there. Emma stood in the doorway and made herself remember their faces. The Marine in bed 4 who'd smiled at her. The woman in bed 9 who'd panicked when her oxygen failed. Sergeant Webb, whose helmet cam footage had exposed Shaw but cost him everything. She owed them justice, owed them. The truth being told, even if it embarrassed generals and destroyed careers. Footsteps behind her. Colonel Voss. They're ready for you, Voss said. Investigation board. Full testimony. How bad's it going to be? Depends on whether they want to hear the truth or just cover their asses. Voss moved to stand beside her. For what it's worth, I've already given my statement. Told them exactly what happened. No sugarcoating. No protecting reputations. How'd they take it? About as well as you'd expect. Lot of uncomfortable questions about how a contract nurse ended up running crisis response while facility leadership was locked in a conference room. Emma almost smiled. Bet Calloway loved that. Calloway's cooperating fully. Giving names. Dates. Everything. I think he figures the only way to protect his daughter long-term is to burn everyone who threatened her. Voss paused. He asked about you. Wanted to know if you were the one who found her. I just made a phone call. Yeah. To a private contractor with resources most people don't have access to. That's not nothing. Emma turned to face her. You think I made a mistake? Bringing in Marcus Sharing. Classified information with a civilian. I think you did what needed doing when nobody else could. That's different than a mistake. Voss's expression softened. But it's the kind of thing that's going to follow you. People are going to question your judgment. Your methods. Your willingness to break rules when you think you're right. Let them question. I can live with people doubting me. I can't live with letting soldiers die because I was too scared to act. Then you're going to be fine. Voss checked her watch. Come on. Time to face the music. The investigation board consisted of 7 officers, ranging from colonel to major general, plus 2 civilian attorneys and a court reporter. They sat behind a long table in a room that smelled like old coffee and older secrets. Emma stood before them, still wearing yesterday's blood-stained scrubs because nobody had given her time to change. The senior officer, Major General Patricia Holbrook, a woman in her late 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, spoke first. Lieutenant Reeves, this board has been convened to investigate the events of the past 24 hours at Riverside Veterans Medical Complex. We've received testimony from multiple witnesses and reviewed preliminary evidence. We're now asking for your account of what transpired. Emma told them everything. The conference room dismissal, the system cascade, the manual override, the convoy casualties, the discovery of Calloway's involvement, Shaw's assault, the helicopter crash. She spoke clearly, professionally, leaving nothing out. When she finished, silence filled the room. Then Holbrook leaned forward. Let me make sure I understand. You, a contract nurse, with 6 months tenure, overrode facility systems without authorization, coordinated emergency medical response without official standing, and ultimately participated in the death of a decorated special operations officer. Yes, ma'am. And you did all of this while your facility director was locked in a conference room. Your chain of command was compromised, and multiple senior officers were present who could have taken charge. Yes, ma'am. Why? It was the question Emma had been waiting for, the one that mattered more than any other because nobody else did. She said simply, "I stood in that conference room and told Director Calloway his system would fail. He dismissed me. When it failed exactly how I predicted, he locked himself away instead of responding. When the wounded arrived, he was nowhere. When Shaw attacked, he was in custody. At every critical moment, the people who were supposed to lead either couldn't or wouldn't. And you felt qualified to step in. I felt obligated. I had the training, the experience, and the proximity. Those soldiers needed someone who knew what they were doing. I was that someone." Emma held Holbrook's Hase. "If that was wrong, if I should have waited for proper authorization while people died, then I accept whatever consequences come with that. But I'd make the same choice again." Another silence. Longer this time. One of the civilian attorneys spoke up. "Lieutenant, you coordinated with a private military contractor, Marcus Yates, to locate Director Calloway's daughter. That involved sharing classified information with an unauthorized party. Do you acknowledge that violation?" "I acknowledge that I made a judgment call under extreme time pressure. A young woman was being held hostage by people willing to murder soldiers to cover their crimes. I had access to someone with the skills to find her. I used that access. If that's a violation, prosecute me. But she's alive because of it." The attorney made notes. Holbrook conferred quietly with the officers flanking her. Finally, she spoke again. "This board recognizes that you operated under extraordinary circumstances with minimal support and no clear chain of command. We also recognize that your actions, while irregular, resulted in the preservation of life and the exposure of serious criminal activity." She paused. "However, we cannot simply ignore multiple protocol violations. Unauthorized system access and cooperation with civilian contractors on classified matters." Emma's jaw tightened. Here it came. The reprimand, the discharge, the consequences. Therefore, Holbrook continued, "This board recommends the following. First, official commendation for actions taken during the medical crisis and system cascade. Second, formal recognition for identifying and disrupting the illegal operation conducted by Captain Shaw. Third, conditional reinstatement to active duty with rank advancement to captain, pending completion of a review period." Emma blinked. "I'm sorry. What, you're being promoted?" "Lieutenant." Holbrook's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her eyes. "You displayed exceptional leadership under crisis conditions. You made difficult decisions with limited information. You prioritized lives over protocol when protocol would have resulted in unnecessary deaths. Those are qualities we need in our officer corps. What about the violations? Annotated in your file with explanation of circumstances. Any future similar choices will be judged more harshly now that you're operating with official authority." Holbrook stood. "Captain Reeves, you've been given a second chance. Don't waste it." The board adjourned. Emma walked out into the hallway in a daze. "Captain, they'd promoted her. After everything she'd done, all the rules she'd broken. They'd promoted her. Voss was waiting outside. Congratulations." "Captain, I don't understand. They should have court-martialed me. They should have thanked you 8 hours ago. Promoting you is the least they could do. Was handel her erfolder. Your new assignment, Medical Operations Officer, direct reporting to Regional Command, effective immediately." Emma opened the folder. Official orders. Her name, her new rank, a position that gave her authority to audit facilities, investigate security concerns, and coordinate responses to compromised operations. Exactly what Keating had offered. Exactly what Cross needed her to have. "They're setting me up," Emma said quietly. "Giving me authority so Hendricks has to come at me harder. So when he makes his move, it's unambiguous. Probably. Voss didn't deny it. But they're also recognizing that you're the right person for this job. That what happened here yesterday could happen again at any facility with the wrong leadership and the right pressure. Someone needs to prevent that. Might as well be you." Emma closed the folder. "Where's Keller establishing security protocols for your new assignment?" Turns out promoting you comes with a protective detail whether you want it or not. I don't want it. Too bad. Hendricks is still out there and Cross is right. He's going to make a move. Having Keller and a team watching your back isn't negotiable. They walked together through the facility. Construction crews were already arriving to begin repairs. The hole in sublevel 2 where the server room had been would take weeks to fix. The blast damage on the west side needed immediate attention. The whole place felt different now. Not quite ruined, but definitely wounded. Emma's radio crackled. Torres's voice. Captain Reeves, Jesus. That's going to take getting used to. You need to come to what's left of the server room. Found something in the backup logs. Emma and Voss took the stairs down. The sublevel was cordoned off with hazard tape. Structural engineers assessing the damage. Torres stood near the collapsed section. Table than hit. Covered in dust, and looking like he hadn't slept in a week. What is it? Emma asked. Remember that back door I found? The one installed 8 months ago. Torres pulled up a file on his tablet. I've been tracing it backwards through the system logs. Whoever installed it knew exactly what they were doing, covered their tracks, spoofed their credentials, made it look like routine maintenance. But they made one mistake. The installation timestamp doesn't match any scheduled maintenance window. It happened at 0300 on a Tuesday. And according to facility logs, the only people with admin access at that time were security night shift, and he trailed off, highlighting a name. Director Leonard Calloway. Calloway installed his own surveillance, Voss said, or someone used his credentials to do it. Torres swiped to another screen. But here's where it gets interesting. The backdoor's been transmitting data for 8 months. Not constantly, just at specific intervals, and the receiving IP address traces back to a Department of Defense server cluster that handles classified communications. Emma felt pieces clicking into place. Cross said they've been investigating for 8 months. The backdoor isn't hostile surveillance. It's DIA monitoring. They've been watching everything that happens here since before I arrived, which means they knew about Calloway's compromise. Voss said slowly, knew about the Sentinel system, knew about Shaw. They let it all happen because they were building a case against Hendricks. And they needed someone inside who'd disrupt the operation at the right moment. Emma finished. Someone who'd force Hendricks' hand without knowing they were part of a larger plan. Torres looked between them. That's some seriously cold calculation. That's intelligence work. Emma felt anger building in her chest. Not hot, explosive anger. The cold, calculating kind that came from realizing you'd been a chess piece in someone else's game. Cross played me from the beginning, placed me here, monitored me, waited for me to do exactly what I did, but you survived. Voss pointed out, you saved lives. You exposed Shaw. You helped rescue Calloway's daughter. Whatever Cross's intentions, you turned her manipulation into something that mattered. Doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it effective. Voss's expression hardened. Now the question is what you do with that anger. You can let it eat you up. Quit again. Walk away from the promotion and the authority, or you can use it, channel it into making sure people like Cross and Hendricks can't play these games without consequences. Emma looked at the destroyed server room. At the evidence of Shaw's final desperate attempt to destroy information he couldn't afford to have exposed, at the blood and fire and chaos that had resulted from powerful people treating soldiers like expendable assets, her radio crackled again. This time it was Keating. All personnel. We have a situation. Major General Holbrook received a message from Lieutenant General Hendricks requesting immediate teleconference to discuss the investigation. He says he has information about Shaw's operation that could be relevant. Emma's blood went cold. He's making his move already. She ran back to the command center. Found Keating, Holbrook, and a dozen others gathered around a monitor. On screen, Lieutenant General Brian Hendricks sat in what looked like his office at the Pentagon. Distinguished, composed, showing absolutely no sign that his entire operation had just collapsed. General Holbrook, Hendricks said, voice smooth. Thank you for taking this call. I understand there's been significant incident at Riverside involving Captain Shaw and multiple casualties. That's correct. Sir. Holbrook replied. We're conducting a full investigation. I'm calling to offer my full cooperation. Shaw was under my command at SOCOM. If he went rogue, if he conducted unauthorized operations, I want to know about it immediately. Hendrix's expression was grave. I take responsibility for my personnel. If one of them violated their oath, that reflects on my leadership. Emma watched him perform, watched him position himself as the concerned commander instead of the architect. It was masterful, believable. If she hadn't known the truth, she would have bought it completely. Sir, Holbrook said carefully, our preliminary investigation suggests Shaw's operation had significant resources and authorization. We're working to trace those sources. Of course, I'll provide complete access to all relevant communications, deployment orders, and operational records. Hendrix leaned forward slightly. I also understand there's a newly promoted Captain Reeves. I believe who was instrumental in exposing Shaw's activities. I'd like to personally commend her for her actions. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at Emma. Hendrix's eyes found her through the screen. Captain Reeves, your courage and dedication during this crisis exemplify the best of our military. I'm recommending you for additional recognition beyond your promotion. Emma stepped forward, looked directly into the camera. Thank you. Sir, I was just doing what needed to be done. That's exactly the attitude we need. In fact, I'd like to invite you to Washington next week for a formal ceremony. Your actions deserve broader recognition. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. We'll arrange secure transport. Full honors. The works. There it was. The trap. Get her to Washington. Isolate her from her support network. And eliminate her in a way that looked legitimate. Un accident. A sudden illness. Something that couldn't be traced back to him. Emma kept her expression neutral. I'd be honored. Sir. Excellent. My office will coordinate details with General Holbrook. Hendrix shifted his attention back to Holbrook. I'll have those records transmitted to you by end of day. If there's anything else you need, don't hesitate to contact me directly. The screen went black. Holbrook turned to Emma. You're not actually going to Washington. The hell? I'm not, Emma said. He just made a direct move. Invited me into his territory. If we document everything, the invitation, the transport arrangements, any contact his people make, we have evidence of intent. You'd be walking into a kill box. I'd be forcing him to commit. Emma looked around the room. Cross wants a smoking gun. Hendrix just handed us one. He can't eliminate me without showing his hand. And once he does, you have him. Keating stepped forward. This is too dangerous. We can find another way. There is no other way. He's too careful. Too connected. The only chance we have is to make him desperate enough to act directly. Emma's jaw tightened. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what I'm doing. You can support it or you can watch from the sidelines. Voss spoke up. If she goes, I go. Protective detail. Witnesses. Documentation. Same. Keller said, we've got enough people to establish security. And I can monitor communications remotely. Torres added, track any signals. Intercept any orders he sends. Holbrook looked at Emma for a long moment. Cross approved this. Cross will approve anything that gets her evidence against Hendrix. Emma pulled out her phone and sent a quick text. Hendrix took the bait. I'm going to Washington. Need full surveillance and backup. The reply came in seconds. Already arranging it. Don't die. Emma showed Holbrook the message. We do this right. We end this. We do it wrong. Hendrix walks and soldiers keep dying. I'll take those odds. The next 5 days moved faster than Emma would have liked. Hendrix's office sent formal invitation. Transport was arranged military aircraft. Secure communications. Protective detail. On the surface, everything looked legitimate. Beneath the surface, Cross's team worked overtime, installing surveillance equipment, briefing backup teams, and establishing protocols for extraction if things went sideways. Emma spent the time preparing not just tactically, but mentally. She visited Ward 7 every morning, reminding herself why this mattered. She reviewed Webb's helmet cam footage until she could recite every second. She read through Foster's testimony, Martinez's statement, Kim's confession. She made herself remember the faces of soldiers who died because Hendricks had valued money over lives. On the 6th day, she boarded the aircraft. Voss and Keller accompanied her, along with 2 security personnel. Cross had vetted personally. The flight to Washington took 4 hours. Emma spent them reading intelligence reports about Hendricks, his career, his connections, his documented operations, and the ones that existed only in classified shadows. The man was a ghost. 32 years of service without a single mark against him. Every operation successful. Every mission accomplished. Every soldier who served under him either praised his leadership or stayed silent. Because the ones who didn't stay silent disappeared. They landed at Andrews Air Force Base just after 1700. A car was waiting, black sedan. Government plates. Driver in military uniform. Everything proper. Everything correct. Emma climbed in. Voss beside her. Keller in the front passenger seat. The other 2 security personnel in a follow vehicle. The driver pulled into traffic. Captain Reeves. General Hendricks sends his regards. He's looking forward to meeting you this evening. This evening, Emma asked. Yes, ma'am. Dinner. At his residence. 1900 hours. He thought it would be more comfortable than a formal office meeting. More isolated. Emma thought, fewer witnesses. Easier to control. That's very generous. She said aloud. They drove through Washington as dusk settled over the city. Emma watched monuments pass outside the window. Symbols of sacrifice and service. Wondered how many of the people buried beneath those memorials had died following orders they trusted. Not knowing those orders came from men who'd betrayed everything the uniform represented. The driver took them to a hotel in Georgetown. Secure floor. Military personnel. Standing guard. All the appearances of proper protection. Emma's room had a view of the Potomac and furniture that cost more than she made in a year. Voss did a sweep, found 2 listening devices, one in the phone, one in the smoke detector, left them active. Cross's team needed Hendricks to think he had surveillance. A top sprezece patruzeci și cinci. Emma changed into her dress uniform, pinned on the captain's bars that still felt foreign. Checked the weapon Cross had provided, compact, concealable, loaded with rounds that would show up on any security scan. Because Hendricks needed to know she was armed. Needed to believe she felt safe enough to carry. The car arrived at 1850. Same driver. Different route this time. Heading north into Maryland suburbs, where houses had gates and security systems and neighbors who minded their own business. Hendricks's residence was exactly what Emma expected. Colonial architecture. Manicured lawn. American flag flying over the entrance. The home of a patriot and dedicated public servant. The driver opened her door. General Hendricks is waiting in the study. Mom? Emma stepped out. Voss and Keller moved to follow, but the driver shook his head. The general requested to meet with Captain Reeves privately. Your detail can wait here. Not happening. Keller said flatly. Major, I have my orders. And I have mine. Captain Reeves doesn't go anywhere without security. The driver's hand moved toward his waist. Keller's moved faster. Suddenly, everyone was armed. Everyone was tense. And the polite fiction of a friendly dinner evaporated. The front door opened. Lieutenant General Brian Hendricks stood in the entrance, still wearing his uniform. Expression disappointed. Major Keller. Is that really necessary? His voice carried the practiced disappointment of a commander dealing with insubordination. Captain Reeves is my guest. She's perfectly safe. With respect, sir, my orders are clear. Then perhaps you should reconsider who's giving you orders. Hendricks's tone sharpened. I'm a 3-star general with 32 years of service. You're a major with questionable judgment and a history of involvement in operations that resulted in significant casualties. Are you really going to pull rank on me? The challenge hung in the air. Keller's jaw tightened, but he didn't lower his weapon. Emma stepped forward. It's fine. Major, I'll speak with General Hendricks. Wait here. Emma, that's an order. She looked at him steadily. Let him see that she knew exactly what she was doing. I'll be fine. Keller lowered his weapon slowly. Emma walked past him, past the driver, and into Hendricks's house. The study was everything she'd imagined. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, walls covered with photos. Hendricks with presidents, with foreign dignitaries, with soldiers in war zones. Evidence of a life spent in service. Evidence of a lie. Hendricks closed the door behind them. Drink. No, thank you. Sit. Suit yourself. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, took a sip. You've caused me significant problems. Captain. Emma didn't react. Sir, Shaw's operation was complex. Delicate. Designed to solve problems that conventional methods couldn't address, and you destroyed it in less than 24 hours. He settled into a chair. I'm impressed. Actually, most people would have followed protocol, waited for authorization, let the system work. You didn't. Soldiers were dying. Soldiers die? That's what soldiers do. Hendricks swirled his bourbon. The question is whether they die accomplishing something meaningful, or whether they die because someone made a mistake. Shaw's operation was meaningful. It eliminated threats to national security that couldn't be addressed through official channels. It murdered American soldiers to cover up your criminal activities. It protected operations that keep this country safe from people who don't have the stomach to do what's necessary. Hendricks's expression hardened. You know what's wrong with modern military leadership? Captain, too much oversight. Too many lawyers. Too many people second-guessing decisions that need to be made in seconds. Shaw understood that. He understood that sometimes you have to operate in shadows to preserve the light. He understood you were paying him to run illegal operations and killing anyone who found out. Semantics. Hendricks finished his bourbon. The point is, you've disrupted something you don't understand. And now you're going to help me fix it. Emma's hand moved toward her weapon. Hendricks raised his own gun, had been holding it behind the chair the whole time, and pointed it at her chest. Don't, he said quietly. Your security detail is currently being dealt with. This house has excellent soundproofing. Nobody's coming to help you. Emma's blood ran cold. You're going to kill a decorated officer in your own home. I'm going to eliminate a threat to national security who attacked me in my residence after making unfounded accusations. Self-defense. Tragic, but necessary. Hendricks stood. Your body will be found with a weapon. Your security team will be found having suffered a coordinated attack by unknown assailants. The investigation will conclude you were targeted by foreign agents seeking revenge for Shaw's operation. You've thought this through. I've been doing this for 32 years. Captain, I don't leave loose ends. He moved closer. The only question is whether you die quickly or whether you spend the next few hours wishing you had. Emma met his eyes. Saw the calculation there. The absolute certainty that he'd won. You made a mistake. She said, Did I? You assumed I came here alone? That Cross didn't have contingencies? That this conversation isn't being recorded and transmitted to multiple secure locations? Emma pulled her phone from her pocket. Screen active. Recording in progress. Every word you just said is evidence. Every thread is documented. Hendricks's expression didn't change, but his gun hand tightened. Recordings can be dismissed. Explained away. Your word against mine. And I've got 32 years of credibility. You had 32 years. You lost it when you pointed a gun at me and confessed to conspiracy. Murder. And treason. Emma's voice was steady. It's over. General. The only question now is whether you surrender or whether you add one more body to your count. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then Hendricks smiled. You think you've won? You think evidence and recordings and testimony matter? But you're forgetting the most important thing. He raised his weapon. Dead witnesses don't testify. The study door exploded inward. Keller came through first. Weapon raised. Followed by Voss and 4 federal agents Emma had never seen before. All of them trained on Hendricks. Drop the weapon, Keller shouted. Hendricks didn't drop it. Didn't lower it. Just stood there with his gun pointed at Emma's chest and looked at the agents who'd just destroyed his exit strategy. You can't be here, he said. I gave specific orders. Your orders were countermanded. Cross said, stepping through the doorway behind the agents. By the Deputy Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and the Attorney General, all of whom have been listening to this conversation for the past 10 minutes. She held up a phone. On the screen, Emma could see 3 faces watching from secure video conference. Hendrix's gun hand started to shake. This is entrapment. Nothing I said is admissible. Everything you said is admissible because Captain Reeves informed you she was recording and you continued anyway. Cross's smile was razor sharp. We have your confession to multiple murders. We have evidence of your financial connections to foreign intelligence. We have testimony from Shaw's surviving team members. We have communications recovered from Shaw's laptop that directly link to accounts you control. She paused. We have everything. General, and now you're going to surrender your weapon and submit to arrest. Hendricks looked at Emma. Really looked at her. Saw the contract nurse who wasn't supposed to matter, who'd been dismissed and underestimated, who'd survived everything he'd thrown at her, and destroyed his operation in the process. You were never just a nurse, he said quietly. No. Emma agreed. I never was. Hendricks lowered his weapon, placed it on the desk, raised his hands. The federal agents moved in immediately, securing him, reading rights, applying restraints. Emma watched them work and felt something release in her chest. Not relief. Not quite. But the knowledge that it was finished. Cross approached her. Nice work. Captain, I want full disclosure. Emma said, everything about how you manipulated this situation. Everything about who knew what and when. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. You used me. Used Calloway. Used everyone at Riverside as bait for your operation. The only reason anyone's still alive is luck, and the fact that we refused to be the pawns you wanted. Emma's voice was hard. You want me to keep working for you, to trust you with authority and access. Then you're going to be transparent about what you did and why. Cross studied her, then nodded slowly. All right. Full disclosure. After the investigation concludes. Fair. They led Hendricks out. Emma watched him go, the decorated general, the trusted commander, the man who'd built a career on sacrifice and service while selling out the soldiers who trusted him. She thought about the Marines and soldiers and airmen who died following his orders. About Calloway's daughter. Used as leverage. About Shaw. Manipulated into believing he was serving his country while committing treason. About all the damage one person could do when they valued power over principle. Voss appeared at her shoulder. How you holding up? Ask me when the adrenaline wears off. Emma looked at her hands. They weren't shaking. He was going to kill me. Would have done it without hesitation. But he didn't. Because you were smarter. Faster. And better prepared. Voss paused. That's not luck. Emma, that's you being exactly who you've always been. Someone who sees threats coming and meets them head on. They walked out of Hendrix's house together. Outside, more federal vehicles had arrived. Investigators, evidence technicians, the machinery of justice grinding into motion. Keller was directing them, coordinating with Cross's team. When he saw Emma, he crossed the lawn immediately. You, good. Yeah, I'm good. Emma looked back at the house. Thank you for not listening when I told you to stand down. Figured you were lying. Keller smiled slightly. Besides, what's the point of being security if I actually let you walk into danger alone? Emma's phone buzzed. Text from Torres News is breaking. Hendricks arrested. Your name is everywhere. You're about to be famous. She groaned. That's the last thing I need. Tu Lotte. Voss said, checking her own phone. Major networks already picked it up. Decorated general arrested in corruption scandal. Contract nurse exposes military conspiracy. You're going to hate the next few weeks. She was right. The next month was a blur of interviews, depositions, and media attention. Emma hadn't wanted and couldn't avoid. The story was too big, too scandalous. A 3-star general arrested for treason, multiple murders, conspiracy with foreign agents. The whole thing played out across newspapers and television, with Emma's name featured prominently. Some outlets called her a hero. Others questioned her methods, her judgment, her willingness to break protocol. Editorial boards debated whether she should be celebrated or court-martialed. Emma ignored most of it. She was too busy testifying. The investigation expanded rapidly. Hendrix's network was larger than anyone had suspected. 7 other officers involved in varying degrees. 12 defense contractors receiving payments. Connections to intelligence services from 3 different countries. The scope was staggering. Calloway testified, gave names, dates, communication. The leverage against his daughter meant he held nothing back. His cooperation bought him a reduced sentence, 15 years, instead of life and protection for his daughter, who disappeared into witness security. Fosta, Martinez, and Kim received immunity in exchange for testimony. Pierce hadn't survived Shaw's paranoia. Garrett had died in the server room explosion. Shaw's body was identified through dental records. His service record was officially stricken. His name removed from honors lists, as if erasing him from history could undo the damage he'd caused. 6 weeks after Hendrix's arrest, Emma was called to testify before a closed Senate committee investigating military oversight failures. She spent 8 hours answering questions about the Sentinel system, the Riverside crisis, and how a contract nurse had ended up exposing a conspiracy that had been running for years. Senator Margaret Finch, who chaired the committee, asked the question everyone wanted answered. Captain Reeves, you walked away from military service 8 months ago. You took a civilian position. You tried to disappear. What made you stand up when you could have stayed quiet? Emma thought about that conference room, about Calloway dismissing her, about the system cascading, about soldiers dying because people in authority had valued ego over competence. Because someone had to, she said simply, and because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. The hearings concluded. Recommendations were made. Policies were changed. The Sentinel system was pulled from all military facilities pending complete redesign. Oversight committees were established. New protocols for crisis response were implemented. Changes that wouldn't have happened if Emma had stayed quiet. 3 months after everything started, Emma stood in Ward 7 for the last time. The facility was being decommissioned, too much damage. Too many bad memories. Patients had been permanently transferred. Equipment was being packed up. The whole place was being emptied of everything except ghosts. She walked through the empty ward, remembering. Bed 4, the Marine who'd smiled. Bed 9, the woman who'd panicked. Bed 6, the soldier who died when his IV pump was weaponized. Footsteps echoed behind her. General Keating, I thought I'd find you here, he said. Last walkthrough, before they tear it down. Keating moved to stand beside her. I wanted to tell you personally. Hendrix was sentenced today. Life without parole. Federal maximum security. He'll be in a cell. Good. Cross also wanted me to pass along a message. The investigation's complete. Everyone connected to Hendrix's network has been identified and charged. It's over. Emma nodded slowly. What about the systems that let him operate for years? The oversight failures, the people who should have seen it but didn't? Being addressed. Slowly. Bureaucratically. But being addressed. Keating paused. Your testimony made a difference. The Senate committee is actually implementing changes instead of just making noise. Will it be enough? Probably not. But it's more than we had before. Keating looked at her. Your new assignment starts next week. Medical operations oversight for the entire Western region. 12 facilities under your authority. You'll have staff, resources, and direct reporting to Medcom. And autonomy, as much as anyone gets in the military, which means you'll still have to fight for every decision and justify every action. Keating smiled slightly. But knowing you, that won't stop you. No, sir. It won't. They walked out of Ward 7 together. Out of the facility that had been Emma's refuge and her battlefield. Outside, Montana sunshine painted everything in gold. Voss was waiting by a car. Ready? Where are we going? Emma asked. Ceremony. They're officially recognizing everyone who responded to the crisis. Full honors. Media coverage. The works. Voss saw Emma's expression. I know you hate this stuff. Come anyway. Some of the families are going to be there. Webb's parents, the soldiers who survived, they want to meet you. That changed things. Emma climbed into the car. The ceremony was held at Mountain View, the facility that had taken Riverside's patients. A stage had been erected. Chairs filled with military personnel. Civilians. Families. Emma sat in the front row next to Keller. Torres. And the medical staff who'd stayed behind during Shaw's assault. Dr. Friedman was there. Nurse Stevens. The security officers who'd defended the facility. Colonel Voss, who'd pulled Emma's file and given her the key card that had saved everything. Director Calloway wasn't there. He was in federal prison awaiting transfer. Dr. Mercer wasn't there either. His consulting firm had dissolved under investigation. Last Emma heard, he was facing multiple lawsuits. The ceremony began with speeches Emma didn't listen to. Commendations were presented. Names were read. When they called Captain Emma Reeves, she walked to the stage and accepted a medal she didn't want for actions that had been necessary. Not heroic. But then they brought out the families. Webb's parents, an older couple who looked broken by grief, approached her with tears streaming down their faces. Thank you. Webb's mother said, for making sure people know what happened to our son, for making sure it meant something. Emma didn't know what to say. He was brave. He got the evidence that exposed everything. The Army told us he died in a training accident. Said we couldn't see the body because of the nature of his injuries. The mother's voice cracked. They were going to bury him with lies. You made them tell the truth. Emma hugged her. Let the woman cry on her shoulder. Felt the weight of that trust. That grief. That desperate need for someone to acknowledge what had been lost. More families came. More handshakes. More tears. More thank yous that Emma didn't feel she deserved. The soldier from Bed 4, the Marine who'd smiled, approached in a wheelchair. His prosthetic leg visible. You probably don't remember me. I remember everyone in Ward 7. Emma said. He smiled. Same smile she'd seen that last good day before everything went to hell. You saved my life. Twice. Once during the cascade. Once during Shaw's attack. I wanted to say thank you in person. You don't need to thank me for doing my job. Yeah, I do, because plenty of people wouldn't have. He extended his hand. Semper Fi. Captain. Emma shook it. Held his Chase. Saw the recognition there, one soldier to another. Both of them understanding what it meant to survive when others didn't. The ceremony ended. People dispersed. Emma found herself standing alone on the stage. Looking out at empty chairs. Voss climbed up to join her. You all right? Yeah. Just thinking about how I spent 6 months trying to be invisible. Trying to convince myself I could walk away from who I was. Emma looked at her hands. Turns out you can't. The person you are follows you everywhere. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. Ask me in a few years when I've had time to figure out what person I actually am. Emma smiled slightly. I used to think I had to choose. Soldier or nurse. Authority or compassion. Protocole or conscience. Turns out maybe I don't. Maybe you're just someone who does what's necessary when nobody else will. Voss said, that's not soldier or nurse. That's just you. They walked off the stage together. Outside, the sun was setting over mountains that had witnessed everything, the crisis, the battle, the victory, and the cost. Emma's phone buzzed. Message from Marcus heard the ceremony went well. Proud of you. Also, I might have some intel on residual elements from Hendrix's network if you're interested. She texted back. Always interested. Send it over? Because it wasn't really over. Hendrix was in prison. His network was dismantled. Justice had been served. But there would be others. Other corrupt officers. Other compromised facilities. Other soldiers who needed someone to stand up when leadership failed. Emma had spent 6 months running from that responsibility. She wasn't running anymore. Her new assignment started Monday. 12 facilities. Thousands of personnel. All of them trusting that the systems designed to protect them would work when they needed them to. Emma would make sure they did. And when she found vulnerabilities, when she discovered people cutting corners or covering up failures or prioritizing politics over lives, she'd do exactly what she'd done at Riverside. She'd stand up. She'd speak out. She'd refuse to be dismissed or silenced or told she didn't belong. Because the woman they'd tried to throw out of that conference room hadn't left. She'd just been waiting for the right moment to show everyone exactly who she was. A soldier, a nurse, a leader who wouldn't tolerate incompetence or corruption or any system that valued convenience over lives, Captain Emma Reeves. Medical operations officer, the one who held everything together when everything else fell apart. And she was just getting started.